This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Each week on our program, of course, we choose a theme and bring you a variety of stories on that theme. Today's show, Simulated Worlds, and we have arrived at Act 3 of our program. I'm just going to describe where we are. We're heading out Interstate 90 here, just north of Chicago towards the northwest suburbs. And it's just basically your basic industrial, parks. There's a building called Intergraph.
But we're looking for the Middle Ages. We're on a quest for medieval authenticity because we're going to medieval times.
Medieval Times is a chain of 7 fake castles across the United States. For about $35 per person, you get a jousting tournament and medieval dinner. Drinks, commemorative photos, and a trip to the dungeon cost extra. To judge the authenticity and meaning of the experience, I asked Michael Camille to come with me. He's a medieval scholar at the University of Chicago, and he's actually made it his hobby to visit medieval recreations and tourist sites wherever he can find them. He had never been to medieval times before, but he had been to several recreations of the Middle Ages in Europe, where they do them in real castles.
There's one called the Canterbury Pilgrim's Way in Canterbury in England, where you literally go into a space where everything, the sound and even the smell of the Middle Ages is supposed to be recreated. They say, see the sights, smell the smells. So you smell the farmyard where the peasants are milking the cows, and
they had wax figures,
and they had waxwork figures for the individual.
And did they smell? They smell. Yeah, they smell. The wax figures smell.
Yes. So when you went,
Michael says he notices an upsurge in interest in the Middle Ages, in medieval fairs and medieval recreations. He thinks it's because most people see the Middle Ages as a time when life was orderly and simple, when knights were knights and peasants were peasants, and people knew where they stood, or that's what people think anyway. Then there are the people who are attracted to the Gothic horror of the period. Gargoyles, dungeons.
It's the same thing. It's finding an ideal, except the ideal is exactly the opposite. It's disorder, not order. It's monstrosity, not pageantry.
Do you think that the impulse that draws people to a place like medieval times and to places like medieval fairs, do you believe that impulse that pulls people towards those things is similar to the impulse that makes you a historian of this period?
People have different reasons for time traveling, is what we're doing now. Some people time travel in order to really enter another world and to find escape ultimately. For our great grandparents who liked medieval things, I think it seemed very safe for the Middle Ages. It was nice, and it was either, if you're religious, it was a nice sacred time. If you were interested in chivalry, it was a chivalric time, and everyone was when concepts of honor were crucial. My interest, I suppose, is more, I see it as a time of enormous otherness to us today. I think of it as incredibly different from today. And it's that difference that excites me. It was a world in which you could get married when you were 12 years old, and when you could be burned at the stake for thinking certain things. I mean, it's a world of such difference. That's what fascinates me.
See, I wonder, in fact, if they're going to emphasize an otherness, or if we'll feel any otherness, or if everything will be...
Well, that's the interesting... Let's see. That'll be interesting.
We continue driving past industrial parks and suburban sprawl until finally, just past the corporate campus of one of the most high-tech companies in America, Motorola. Michael and This American Life producer Nancy Updike and I see the sign. Medieval Times, next right. Okay, now keep your eyes peeled. See the flags over there?
Oh, no.
I bet that underneath those flags... Do you see it?
Oh my goodness, there it is. It's a wonderful look at a marvelous crenellation with 3 flags. The American flag, I can't see, it's too far away to see what other flag. And of course immediately there we have a problem. The American flag flying over a medieval castle.
A 14th century castle, Michael says. A late 14th century castle, combined with a McDonald's. Picture, if you will, a low, square industrial warehouse with turrets and castle towers stuck on here and there. As we pull up closer, we see that the whole building is made of this kind of plasticky cement with lines carved on it to imitate stones. Michael marvels at what he keeps calling the heraldry, the huge multicolored shields hanging high on the wall facing the parking lot. They are authentic, he says. In the parking lot, we encounter an unpleasant smell, but we are unable to determine if it is authentic Middle Ages or not. And then...
If you would proceed to the doorway, you should be meeting with the royal couple, His Grace the Count and the Lady Countessa.
We're barely in the door, and people in bright velvety costumes are Count and Contessa-ing us. and we're quickly ushered before a man in a crown and a cape who looks a lot like the post-James Bond, pre-Rising Sun Sean Connery, and a woman in a glittery princess dress. It's not really the costumes that get to you in medieval times. Walking around, you realize the sheer power of language. Everyone is calling you milord and milady, and it is hard to know how to respond. Everyone in our little group gets very awkward. For some reason, I find that I stop using contractions, as if no one around me speaks English as a first language.
We did not understand that. We cannot all go together.
Nancy, meanwhile, completely freaks out. I'm going to play you this piece of tape. And what you need to know is that when it starts, she's sticking a big boom microphone in the Count's face.
My lord and my lady.
I'm not familiar with that term, radio. What is that? He's pointing a strange weapon at us, milady. I know not what that is. It's some kind of a mace, I believe.
All of a sudden, without warning, she bows.
We mean you no harm.
Oh, is that right? Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Our photo is taken with the royals. Those photos are for sale later in the evening. And we are each handed a black and white paper crown. Everyone acts like there is no question whether or not we will in fact wear these crowns.
Tonight you shall be cheering for the holy and pious warrior priest, the Black and White Knight. Your mortal enemy for this evening's tournament is the Red and Yellow Knight.
Michael, our medieval scholar, is loving this, and I mean loving it. He loves how they try to get the audience involved in the experience. He loves the fact that everyone is divided into 6 different teams, each rooting for a different region of Spain, each rooting for a different knight. He loves the fact that we were introduced to the lords of this castle.
This is just wonderful. This is so much more exciting than I imagined. This is a really wonderful experience.
Why? What are you seeing that you're liking so far?
Well, I think that's very nice to be welcomed by the Lord and Lady of the castle. Hospitality was a crucial aspect of the medieval tournament.
Really?
Hospitality. The whole point was you were being hospitable. You were bringing people into your and giving all your largesse.
Because we're here as members of the media, we're soon taken aside to be greeted by the real lord of this particular castle. His name is Leslie Davies, and he is not wearing a velvet cape, but rather a well-cut, expensive-looking dark blue suit.
I'm the man that cuts the fish. In other words, I sign the paycheck, so yes, I'm the Lord.
Mr. Davies is the general manager here. He says that medieval times started in Spain. Its owners are Spanish, and so the tournament we're about to see is a recreation of a Spanish-style tournament in the year 1093. He says the main difference between the 2 European castles owned by the firm and the 7 in the States is that the crowds in the United States are less inhibited when they root for their knights. It is, by his account, a very profitable little kingdom they run.
How much does one of these buildings cost you to put up?
Between 15 and 20 million.
How many people do you serve here a year?
About 300,000.
Marketing manager Steve Davidson pipes in.
That's 300,000 appetizers, 300,000 bowls of soup, 300,000 chickens, 600,000 glasses of Pepsi. It's rather involved.
Now, to get a perspective on exactly what these numbers mean, I think we actually have to leave the scene in the castle for a moment. Let me get this sound out of here. Hold on. Okay, there. And now? Well, let's do the numbers. Medieval Times in Chicago serves 300,000 people a year. 300,000 is also the size of the audience of Chicago's public radio station, where I work. Now let us consider staff size. Size of National Public Radio's entire network news division. That's all of Morning Edition, all of All Things Considered, all of National Public Radio's reporters all over the globe, is 195 people. Medieval Times has 250 full-time employees at this one castle. Remember, there are 6 others in addition. Medieval Times has an annual budget that is millions of dollars larger than National Public Radio, and all of this data may not mean all that much to you. But from where I sit, I feel that it forces me to this disturbing conclusion, and that is that I work for a radio network that is less popular than jousting, a sport that has been dead for 400 years.
All the way around, please. The very last green section.
The audience now files into an arena that seats around 1,400. It looks like a medium-sized professional hockey rink, partly because they have those plexiglass screens around the edges of the oval to protect you, to divide you from the performers who are down there in the center. Instead of ice, of course, in the center, there's sand. And the tiered seats that rise up steeply on all sides of this oval have tables in front of them for dinner. And the seats are color-coded. everyone rooting for our knight, the black and white knight, sits together in a group. Michael notices the music.
As these people are processing in, we have Gregorian chant, religious music, beautiful, piped, liturgical music going on in the background, which is very strange at a tournament.
Strange and inaccurate.
But again, I don't like using that word inaccurate. You can't measure an experience like this through accuracy, because I just don't think that's the right criteria to say this isn't right, because I think it's how it feels.
But that doesn't feel quite right to you.
The priest might do a blessing or something, but you're not going to have monks singing part of the holy liturgy before a tournament.
It turns out the entire evening is scored with music. It's like a movie. During the horse exhibition section of the evening, there's a kind of disco horsey music. Nancy swears she heard Carmen at one point during the evening. But most of the music sounds like the soundtrack of a movie whose images and values, when you get right down to it, come straight from the Middle Ages. Doesn't this sound like the theme to Star Wars?
Good evening, my lords and lady. Welcome to Medieval Times. My name is Jim, and I'll be your serf tonight.
Jim brings us each a medieval appetizer, kind of faux pizza, a medieval roasted chicken, which is conveniently pre-sliced, which is important because we're given no silverware and have to tear it apart with our hands, and our medieval Pepsis. Nancy and Michael find the food hateful, but I kind of like it.
Are you a wench?
Yes, I am a wench.
Are you a Brinks wench or a...
I'm a photo wench.
We're informed that wench is an actual job title here, that it's on the application. We wonder if people put it on their resumes once they've worked here. Cocktail wenches, server wenches. Michael says the whole wench thing, the whole idea of it is just complete bunk. In the real Middle Ages, women actually never served food to nobles, who were the only people who attended tournaments like this. And in fact, even the word wench did not exist until much, much later.
So wench is, ye olde wench is a modern construction. I mean, that's a construction, something to do with London pubs of the 18th century. It's not to do with the Middle Ages.
Soon, another anachronism. All the serfs and wenches traipse out into the central arena.
My lords and ladies, show your appreciation for your hard-working serfs and wenches.
Oh, serfs and wenches are out now.
Now surely
you see, you'd never have serfs and wenches out on the tournament field.
Because they're too lowly?
They're too lowly, they're absolutely lowly.
But this is America, after all, where any serf or wench can grow up to be president. And so it is no surprise that commoners end up on the playing field with the nobles. And it is the nobles who star in the show. 6 knights and 6 squires, all of them with long hair and fake chainmail. That gives them the look that's part Middle Ages and part John Bon Jovi. They start by doing these complicated dressage demonstrations with their horses. They have these beautiful Andalusian stallions. And the horses have been trained to sidestep and bow and weave in and out in complicated patterns. The knights then do these various kinds of target practice on horseback. They capture flags, they hit bullseyes, they spear tiny brass rings with their lances. None of this, Michael says, would have been part of a real medieval tournament. This would be practice stuff you do beforehand. Then, the arena begins to fill with smoke. Fog machines pump out so much mist you cannot see the floor. There's eerie purple light and a hooded figure with a lantern.
Oh no! No, in the arena, this does not bode well, your grace. I shall summon forth your court sorcerer at once. Through this mist walks Lord Galenon, High Priest of the Druids.
High Priest of the Jews? Did he say High Priest of the Jews?
The Druid. Now this is a funny mixture. There were no Druids in 11th, 19th Spain.
The Druids were in England, and they vanished 600 years before tournaments like this. They built Stonehenge. This was the one moment at medieval times when Michael seemed truly disappointed.
I think they're trying to evoke kind of... Why didn't they use Merlin or something, like Merlin the Magician? That would be more apt. So instead of it's to bring in a feeling of magic. I suppose this is the New Agey bit of it. But
after this, there are more impressive horse maneuvers. We're told that we're supposed to boo every time the Green Knight appears. The Green Knight is set up as the evil knight in this pageant. Michael says that particular color choice is not the best. He says that in the Middle Ages, green was the color of goodness. It was the color of godliness. Think Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Black, he says, would have been a more accurate color to represent an evil knight in the Middle Ages, but black representing evil probably would not fly in multicultural modern America. Finally, target practice is finished, and the main event's about to begin. Jousting.
You're holding a couch lance. That's the lance that you're holding under your right shoulder. And the whole point is to, in the joust itself, is to unhorse your opponent.
So wait a second. These guys are going to charge against each other. I mean, it's just occurred to me the reality of what's going to happen here. They're going to charge at each other and try to hit each other off of a horse with a big stick.
That's what a joust is.
How can you survive that?
Women and girls in the audience give handkerchiefs to the various knights to carry into battle, a historically correct moment that Michael likes a lot. And then the jousting begins. Over the course of the evening, we've learned next to no facts or history about the Middle Ages, but Medieval Times does stage a great fight. It's complicated, it's cinematic. As I said earlier, there's music through everything that happens on this arena. It's totally choreographed, it lasts a long time, and it involves no fewer than 14 people and 6 horses.
Green knocked yellow off the horse. Now the green guy is coming at him with a what is that? Like
that's a mace.
A mace, a ball on a chain on a stick.
Ooh, that's.
And now the yellow guy is staggering around holding a knife.
Green Knight, hold! Stand fast! You have lost your weapon and therefore lost the honor of horseback. I say dismount and continue this fight on foot.
So the baddie knight's getting down now.
Now wait, would that happen in a real tournament? They'd tell the guy to get off the horse?
Yes, because often tournaments would. In fact, this is a misconception about knights. Even when knights went into battle in the battlefield, they got off their horses to fight. The English became the great warriors of the late Middle Ages by getting off the horses just like this and fighting on the ground. Because you couldn't do much on a horse. You could do the lance thing, but you couldn't kill someone up close.
By the end of the evening, everybody's been killed except for the evil Green Knight, who gets sent to the dungeon, and one other knight. Our knight, the Black and White Knight. Later we were told the whole thing's fixed, and they put us on the Black and White team because they knew he was going to win. Michael points out that the whole idea that these knights would try to kill each other is not historically accurate. Most tournaments were not intended as a fight to the finish. But despite this, he liked Medieval Times. In the car on the way home, he said that it was medieval in spirit anyway. It was spectacle, it was circus, it was populous, it was lowbrow in the best possible sense.
There were hundreds of things in that I could have said were inaccurate, inauthentic in terms of costume, design, action. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. If that was an accurate representation of a medieval tournament, people would be bored stiff. They wouldn't go to it. It wouldn't get anybody to it because they lasted for 6 days, and they were like conventions of aristocrats. I mean, so that it wasn't the kind of experience that is going to be entertaining to people. Yeah. So if they were being truly authentic, it would be very boring for us.
When we were driving out to Medieval Times earlier, Michael had said that the thing that appealed to him most about the Middle Ages was its otherness, the fact that it did not seem like our world at all. And in the car home, I suggested to him that Medieval Times did not create that feeling at all. It was mostly familiar images from movies and storybooks. But he disagreed.
It was weird enough in its in all the mixtures of strange things in it. I mean, the odd mixture of the modern building and the castle structure and the long-haired hunky knights who looked like centerfolds from Playgirl with the ways that the things were mixed together. To me, in a strange way, was medieval, because I would say the Middle Ages is incredibly hybrid and confused, and that's what attracts me about it. It's certainly not the age of order and systematic piety that everyone thinks.
But the strangeness you're describing is not the strangeness of the Middle Ages; it's the strangeness of America.
Exactly, Michael said. In fact, as far as he's concerned, America is a very medieval country, far more medieval than Western Europe.
In the Middle Ages, was a sort of pioneer culture. They were just beginning to create things. It was the sense of newness moving forward, evangelical, full of weird and wonderful mixtures, ultra-religious and yet at the same time ultra-decadent. I think that's one of the reasons perhaps why we're so fascinated in America with the Middle Ages, because we're living it.
In the commemorative photo they took of us at Medieval Times, the distinguished scholar from the University of Chicago is grinning happily, a paper crown on his head. The little mock frame they put the photo inside says in typeface at the bottom, "Your night to remember." That's night. K-N-I-G-H-T. Act 4. One, two, three.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes things aren't what you think they are, and people aren't who you think they are. That's what we're talking about today on Ira Glass.
That is really weird to hear you do that. I'm here. This is actually Ira Glass. I'm sitting here with Fred Armisen.
Hi.
Hi. Who's probably best known for Saturday Night Live, but also Portlandia. And I knew that you had worked up an imitation of me because we just happened to meet once.
Yeah.
And you told me, and then you said this thing that I thought was a polite way of saying, I can't remember exactly how you put it. It was sort of like, but you're not famous enough, so I have no use for this on television.
I might have said that. I might have said that exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, after that, this writer at SNL, Christine Nangle, and I, we figured out a way to turn it into a sketch that we could put on Weekend Update, the news segment on Saturday Night Live. By chance, NPR came up in the news. I think this was around the time that they were talking about cutting some of the funding and
cutting the funding. This is when Vivian Schiller got fired. Vivian Schiller, the president of NPR.
That's exactly right. How's she doing, by the way? Okay, have you kept in touch with her?
Tea Party. Here to comment on NPR's troubles, the host of This American Life, Ira Glass.
So I came out and I'm wearing your glasses and like a wig to look like you.
It's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Act 1. You know, I was thinking the other day.
And the joke being that you were interviewing people at Weekend Update.
Ira, look, you can't bring other people on as your guests. You're my guest. It's just your CEO just resigned, and now the Republican budget proposes cutting your funding completely. I mean, aren't you afraid that NPR might start laying people off?
Act 2.
Oh, boy.
Laid off. No guts.
So this never made it to air. This is just the recording from the dress rehearsal. Why didn't it make it to air?
Rita finally gets a job.
Who knows? It might have been a little unwieldy.
So if people want to watch that, the entire video is, we have a link at our website. So I invited you here today because the theme of this week's show is doppelgangers. The show is about doppelgangers, about people who are doubles or lookalikes. And I realized that because you had worked up this imitation, you could co-host as my doppelganger in this room, in this studio. This is the one place where I actually am famous enough that you can use this imitation.
Yeah, yes.
So if you're ready, that's what we'll do.
Sure, and you could. Another way to look at it is you're co-hosting with me. That this is my show.
Exactly,
and that's what we're talking about today. I'm Ira Glass.
All right, so let's go to this copy. So we have some copy for today.
Okay.
That's this one, and let's go to there. And let's just let's see. Why don't you start?
Okay. Today on our show.
I'm just thinking about how I would do it. I would go like, today on our show.
Oh, yes, that's better. Okay. Today on our show,
we have 2 stories of supposed doppelgangers.
And we try to figure out the truth of them.
Do I sound that nasal?
Maybe.
And we try to figure out the truth of them. One concerns 2 men who've never met.
The other, 2 animals who never meet.
I think you should do the next part because it's so like... Do you want to hear me do it first, or do you just want to do it?
From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life.
Distributed by Public Radio International. I feel like a Muppet. Why does it make me feel like a Muppet, Fred? Seriously,
I think you could be a Muppet. I don't know why they don't have a Muppet of you.
From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life.
Distributed by Public Radio International.
Distributed by Public Radio International. I'm Ira Glass.
And I'm Ira Glass.
And I'm Ira Glass. Stay with us.
So, Fred, you want to start Act 1?
Okay. Act 1, Dead Ringer. We start today with a story of physical resemblance, not of a person, but of a food.
A quick warning that if you're squeamish or averse to graphic images of food, there's going to be some of that in this report.
Here's Ben Calhoun.
I first heard about this whole thing in an email. It came from a listener, a woman named Emily Rancer. She works in the food industry. And the letter Emily wrote was about a story she'd heard from a farmer. The farmer who told her this is apparently a person of some standing in the pork industry. And admittedly, I don't know the first thing about the pork industry, but he's in charge of a pork-producing operation that spans several states. The story he told Emily went something like this. A while ago, he was visiting a pork processing plant in Oklahoma. He's walking through it with a friend, a guy who managed the plant, actually. And at some point, he saw boxes stacked on the floor labeled artificial calamari. He stood there, wondering for a second. And then he asked his friend, "What's artificial calamari?" "Bung," his friend replied. "It's hog rectum. Rectum that would be sliced into rings, deep fried, and boom, there you have it." Okay, if I can, let me just narrate for you what this would mean. It would mean that in restaurants everywhere, right this second, people are squeezing lemon wedges over crispy golden rings, dipping the rings into marinara sauce, and they're eating hog rectum. Now they're chewing, satisfied, and deeply clueless. It's payback. It's payback for our blissful ignorance about where our food comes from and how it gets to us. It's amazing, and it's perfect. But it also seems like it couldn't possibly be true. So I called up the farmer to talk to him personally. I wanted to hear it firsthand. And the farmer confirmed the story. The entire thing. The boxes, the bung. But when I asked him to go on the record, to tape an interview and give his name here on the radio, he very politely declined. Which seems suspicious, right? When I asked him why, he said he'd spoken with his girlfriend about it, and she suggested that he should think about the words that he wanted to come up when somebody Googled his name. This was all fine, though, because he referred me to the real expert, the guy who gave him the tour of the hog processing plant. And that guy, he agreed to talk.
Hello?
Hi, is this Ron?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Ron Meek, meat processing plant manager, presently residing in Mountain View, Missouri, where he runs an organic beef processing plant there, called Beyond Organic. If the story really were true, Ron would have been the guy who explained to the farmer what was in those boxes.
The boxes are 10-pound boxes, and they were all, they cut off so much of it, like maybe a 10 or 12-inch piece of the bung, and you know what it looks like? Just looks like after they're cleaned and washed and everything, they just look like a bunch of big noodles in a box is all it looks like.
But specifically the labels that said imitation calamari, where did you personally see the imitation calamari labels?
I've never seen a label say that. That's all I was told by the people that told me that. The people I work for, they told me that.
Oh, the people that you worked for told you that it was used for imitation calamari.
Right.
And is there any possibility that you think that when they were explaining this to you, that they were kind of having you on a little bit?
Having me on?
Yeah, like...
bullshitting me?
Yeah.
Well... I wouldn't think that, but, you know, it could be 5%, could have been that, you know, but I seriously doubt it.
Okay, just to give a little better picture, a pork bung, and bung is the actual industry term for it, is long and floppy and ugly. At one end, it widens out into this more bulbous shape, like a pink, wrinkly pear. That's the rectum. At the other end, it narrows into a soft, pinkish-white tube. I know, it sounds gross. But also consider we are a nation that eats more than 1 billion pounds of sausage every year. Billion with a B. Maybe you like liverwurst or capicola or summer sausage with a natural casing. Then you, like me, have eaten bung. Stuffed, dried bung. A lot of brats and Italian sausages are stuffed in intestine, so if you eat those regularly, you pretty much live up the street from bung. So why does the idea of a fried ring of bung just feel grosser? Well, partly it's the visual, right? When you see that little ring of calamari, you don't want to picture it in the context of a pig's behind. Then there are all the people who don't eat pork, period. Ron said there's also another reason.
Just because the word bung, probably. I mean, people don't just want to jump up and say, man, I'm going to eat me some bung tonight. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is.
But the big question, the question you've been thinking about since we got on this topic, have you or I eaten imitation calamari? Bung dressed up as seafood? Well, Ron didn't know. He said his plant exported a lot of their bung to Asia. But he just didn't know much about whatever happened after it left the door. So he could only speculate. Anything, he said, would be a wild guess. So I turned to people who would know. Is pork bung being falsely peddled as calamari? I called the USDA. The USDA's Food Inspection Service issued the following statement to me. Products we inspect, including those derived from pork, must be accurately labeled and cannot purport to be a product of another species. So, it's against the rules. But people break the rules. A recent study of seafood by a group called Oceana used DNA testing and found that all across the country, fish is regularly being labeled as other species in restaurants and in grocery stores. Escalar sold as white tuna, Pacific rockfish being fraudulently sold as snapper. In Miami, more than 30% of fish was being sold as something it wasn't. In New York, the number was 39%. Boston, 48%. Los Angeles, are you ready? 55%. 55. That means if you order fish in LA, you are most likely eating a species you did not order. In other words, seafood substitution is rampant in this country. And depending on where you live, from what I can tell, you can get cleaned hog bung for about half the price of cleaned squid. So there would be money in it if you could pull off the switch. And as best as I can tell, were you to do this, you would not be caught. A lawyer who's familiar with this area of law and regulation told me, once bung leaves the plant, there's a variety of agencies and entities that would be in play. USDA, FDA, state and local government. But ultimately, he said, the regulation we have is not designed to catch an offense like this. It's aimed mostly at sanitation and food safety. So bottom line, the lawyer said, if somebody wanted to do it, chances are they'd get away with it. So is someone out there doing this? Well, for weeks I looked for an answer. The USDA says they've never heard of anyone trying to pass pork bung as squid, or any other species. I contacted the National Restaurant Association, the National Pork Producers Council, the National Pork Board, a Squid Fishermen's Association, Cisco, and other big food and restaurant supply companies.
It's hog what?
Bung, hog rectum.
Oh my gosh.
That's the executive director of the California Wetfish Producers Association. But the answer was pretty much always the same. Nobody had heard of it. But almost to a person, they added that doesn't mean it's not happening somewhere. Ron Meek said a lot of the bung from his plant got exported. So my next call was to the U.S. Meat Export Federation, which confirmed that, quote, the main destinations for pork bungs are China, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and the Philippines. They are mainly used for processing, but we are aware of some uses in soups and certain entrees. We are not aware of them being used as a substitute for calamari. But it's not impossible. Unquote. So over the past few weeks, I've called Asian food suppliers, people who live in, work in, and eat in those countries. I talked to a woman named Corinne Trang, who's written an overarching compendium of Asian cuisines. I've talked to academics at NYU and Haverford and USC and Harvard. I've reached out to chefs who know Asian food. The answer, again, always similar. Never heard of it, but it's possible. Partly because bung doesn't have such a complicated reputation in Asia, where it has to be some kind of secret ingredient like it does here. On the other hand, though, people pointed out that in Korea and Japan, you can't get more than a few hours from the ocean. Squid is cheap and it's readily available. You'd only eat a substitute if you wanted the substitute. Generally, people said, if the switch was happening somewhere, they'd guess China. Eventually, I found my way to this guy who I was really excited about, someone who I thought might have my answer. He was, get this, an anthropologist who lived and worked in China for 40 years, where he studied food, and specifically meat. When I talked to him, though, he made 2 points. Point 1, my question about this happening in Asia was racist. Even just asking the question was racist, because it plays on ignorant stereotypes about other cultures eating things that we perceive as weird. Point 2 was that Ron Meek, my guy from the pig plant, Ron was pulling my leg, and he was getting away with it because I was a dumbass. He told me more than once that I should, quote, find something worthwhile to do with myself. When we ended our conversation, he told me that he was refusing to even dignify what I was doing by appearing on the radio or by letting me use his name. Okay, so to respond to his points one by one, first, am I racist against Asians? Well, I'm half Chinese. My mom's Chinese. Like anyone, I've had the occasional issue with my mother, but this has not been one of them. We grew up eating chicken feet and fish eyes, and I think it's possible to raise the question of who eats what without being racist. His second point, though, that Ron Meek was pulling my leg. I mean, the guy was still an expert on meat in China, so I called Ron back.
All right, shoot me some questions, dude.
I told him the whole thing, about the anthropologist, about what he said. I guess, I mean, the only thing I want to ask you is are you messing with me?
No. I mean, that was what my boss told me. I was like, what the hell do we save these hog bungs for? He says they use them for imitation squid and stuff like that.
But so in your heart of hearts, you believe it?
Yeah, man. I mean, I ain't going to sit here and tell you things that there's bullshit and play with you when I'm just going off of my knowledge of saving hog bungs. I mean, you got to think about how far advanced slaughterhouses are, especially big ones that want to make every penny count. Like the one I worked at, you bring the pigs in, you stun them, then you stick them, and the blood goes off into a trough, and it goes down, and it's vacuum sucked out of there with a vacuum into centrifuges, and they separate the blood from the blood plasma. And they save that. I mean, they save the lungs, they save the pancreas, they save the spleens, they save the hearts. The only thing left by the time it's all said and done is a skull and jawbones. I mean, you can be an anthropologist all you want, and if you don't work in a processing plant, you don't know.
I contacted the plant Ron worked at where this happened, and for what it's worth, they backed him up. They said their sales team had heard of people eating pork bung as imitation calamari, though they hadn't witnessed it firsthand or heard it directly from a customer. It was all hearsay. So at the end of all this, I still had no proof that anyone was passing off bung as squid. And then I realized I hadn't asked the more basic question here. Could bung do it? Could it pass as calamari? And that question led me to a guy named Eddie Lin. Eddie Lin has eaten a lot of bung. At least 100 times, he said, probably more. Eddie has a extreme food blog called Deep End Dining and an online TV show called Kamikaze Kitchen.
I can definitely see a resemblance texture-wise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely. There's sort of a rubbery texture, sort of like a calamari.
Huh.
But you would really have to get rid of that, needless to say, foul flavor and odor from the bung.
Somehow I hadn't figured that the bung, once it was scrubbed and rinsed and cleaned with steam, that it would still taste like,
So yeah, you would definitely have to do some major blanching, or brining. I meant brining. Yeah.
To try and leach those flavors out of there.
Yeah, I mean those flavors have been marinating in that pig for quite a while. So
a lifetime.
Yeah.
He thought it wouldn't be easy, but he thought it could be done. And there was only one way to tell if he was right: to cook up some bung and eat it. And if the taste was overwhelming and the texture was all wrong, well, then I'd have my answer. And at this point, I'll be frank, I started to root for the bung. I realized that this is not a story about fraud. It's not a bait-and-switch story. It's a story about possibility. It's classic rags to riches. It's about whether a cut of meat, perhaps the lowliest, most malignable cut of meat in America, might somehow, in at least one place on the planet, be dipped in the redemptive oils of the great culinary equalizer that is the deep fryer. And it might emerge transformed, no longer an outcast, but instead hair-combed, clean-shaven, in a suit and tie. It might walk reborn onto a table. Through sheer force of resemblance, it might be loved. Its history, years of drudgery and hardship, doing the body's least glamorous job, all washed away. No, this is not the story of a con man like Bernie Madoff. It's Pretty Woman. This is whether Good Will Hunting finds his way out of Southie. It's whether Charlie, on that very last chocolate bar, really can get a golden ticket. To do all this, to try it, I called my little sister, Lauren. She's a chef, trained abroad at the Cordon Bleu, worked at Michelin star restaurants. She's that kind of chef. Soon we were standing in front of a deli case, and I don't know why I feel hesitant about saying this, because I don't think it's racist. It was in Chinatown.
Pork bung. There it is. Look at it. It looks like the sphincter.
Wait, what do you mean it looks like a...
This one up here that's cut up, it looks like a butthole.
And Lauren had theories about pulling it off. Brining, soaking, maybe braising. But once we got to the store, once she'd seen the meat up close, her doubts got worse.
I think after looking at it, I don't think it's gonna...
You don't think it's gonna work?
No. It's too thick. There's too much muscle tissue. It's too thick. You'd have to use like a ring cutter to make it the right thickness.
What do you think those bits are in there?
Oh, poo.
My sister said Eddie Lynn was definitely right. The giveaway would be the stubborn flavor of poo. That flavor, she said, it's tough to get rid of. The earth revolves around the sun, and bung will always taste like. But there was no backing out now. We would eat. We would eat our way to the truth. And so what if it didn't look good? So what if bung was destined to taste like bung? You know who it didn't look good for? And he still put up a fight? Rocky Balboa. That's who. This was it. The bung versus calamari. Squid versus tail. The rumble in the bunghole. We set up the tasting at a restaurant, in the lull between lunch and dinner. In the dining room, there was just a few tables eating, and all around the restaurant, the morning shift was wrapping up. As we walked in with a red cooler filled with squid and hog bung. So originally, I'd recruited some half a dozen people from our office at This American Life as tasters. The final group the day of the tasting included, from the office, Seth Lind and Brian Reed. So when's the last time that you guys had calamari?
I had calamari probably like a month ago.
And what about you, Brian?
I haven't had it since we got this tip about the possible.
Oh my gosh, have you been avoiding?
Yeah, no, totally. And to be honest, I ate calamari pretty I'm like a regular eater of calamari. Not like all the time, but it's something I'll routinely order if it's on an appetizer menu, Yeah. I mean, I grew up in an Italian-American family where my grandparents were also born here. I feel like calamari is just big among that sector of people at Olive Garden and stuff like that. So I just grew up eating it,
I hadn't realized this. For weeks, Brian had been avoiding calamari. He'd been living in fear.
Brian, if you find out that they're indiscernible from each other, will you ever eat calamari again?
No, I don't think so. That's why I want to do this. Just to know going forward.
Back in the kitchen, things were looking bad. I'd given up on the idea that bung would taste the same as calamari. Now I'd hung my hopes on the idea that at least visually it would look the same. But as my sister dropped the floured rings of hog bung into the fryer, they had turned into this kind of big, ugly, tangled wad. Nothing like the jiggly squid rings. Oh, they're very scraggly looking. But then, as if by a miracle, they changed. My sister gave a shake to the fry basket, and as they sizzled, the bung just seemed to gracefully snap into rings. Oh, look at that though. It's like magic. They're turning into circles.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull these first ones.
Soon, we were face to face with the plate. On it, there were two piles of rings, similar in size, similar in shape. The bung had more of a frizzly edge to it, kind of like a fancy onion ring. The calamari was smoother.
Okay, so
I asked Seth and Brian to just give a first impression.
I have a guess, but I could. It's one of those things where you're pretty sure, but you could totally be wrong.
God, I thought I would be more sure. I'm waffling now. My gut reaction is that this was calamari and this was not.
Okay, before you eat it,
Yeah.
See, I totally thought this was calamari, the other one.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it at the same time.
Okay, so just to be clear what's going on here. Seth has chosen one pile of rings, which he thinks is calamari. Brian has done the same thing, only Brian is choosing the other stack of fried rings.
Okay, so we're about to bite into these simultaneously, which we both think this is calamari,
but they're the opposite ones.
the opposite ones. Okay.
So in actuality, Seth is right. Seth is eating calamari. The chewing you hear from Brian's mic, that is the sound of a calamari lover eating fried pig rectum. I should also add, there were actually two varieties of bung on the plate that day. One bung that my sister had blanched over and over to mellow any organy fecal flavor, and then untreated, straight-up bung. Unfiltered, unchained, uncut, 100% pure bung. That one, the latter one, bung at its purest, at the height of its bunginess, this is what Brian was eating. As they ate, Seth still looked confident.
I think I was right.
I think I was right.
Really?
Yeah. I totally think I was right.
Game, set, match, bung. And it wasn't just Brian. I thought so. Damien, who manages the restaurant, he also thought it was passable. A few of us picked up a faint flavor of pork rind, but if you weren't really looking for it, you wouldn't notice it was there. One of the restaurant staff, a guy named Ethan Van Buren, had the simplest, clearest explanation.
I think that when you slice something up really thin and deep fried, it's going to taste like something that's been deep fried.
If a plate full of the bung came out, how many people do you think would even... do you think you'd notice? If you were in that setting.
I'd say top scenario is somebody says, this calamari tastes funny, and keeps eating it.
And as for Brian, oh, Brian. Brian was reeling a bit, trying to figure out just what this was going to mean for him.
I'm sure I've been fooled in the past. I'm just like sure of it.
Wait, oh, you're thinking that you've been places in the past and you've had bung?
I just imagine like seeing a plate that looks like that with this food that looks like this on it, like sitting with my family growing up. Like we definitely have eaten something that tasted like this and just thought it was calamari for sure.
Not only wasn't he sure if he'd ever eat calamari again, he didn't want to eat the calamari on the plate in front of him. Calamari, I guaranteed him, was real. Just to repeat one last time, I have no proof that anyone, anywhere, has ever tried to pass off pork bung as calamari in a restaurant. All I know is, if you wanted to do it, it would be easy. And I'm choosing to believe that it's happening somewhere. Because at some point in working on this story, I stopped identifying with Brian and anyone who might feel ripped off or grossed out by getting imitation instead of the real thing. Now, I identify with the bung. And I'd like to think that somewhere out there, right now, under a heat lamp, a platter is sitting. It's warm, and it's full of promise, and transformation, and redemption. That's the world that I'll choose to live in. For me, for you, for the bung. For the bung in all of us.
Ben Calhoun, he's one of the producers of our program.
Ben Calhoun, he's one of the producers of our program. Thanks to the restaurant Aurora in Brooklyn for letting us use their kitchen for our taste test. Okay. Who was this? Wait, who am I?
Well, coming up, Philadelphia and Afghanistan. Doppelgangers?
It's in a minute. From Chicago Public Radio and Public Radio International, when our program continues.
Hey there, podcast listeners. Ira here. So today's show, the subject of the show, it happens to be about a bunch of people who happen to curse a lot at their workplace. On the radio, of course, we have to bleep out their curses. Here on the internet, we're not going to do that. We think you get a better sense of the place and of the people when you hear what they really said. Now, if you're somebody who prefers a bleeped version, you can get one at our website, thisamericanlife.org. Either way, hope you like the show. See, we bleeped that one. But after this, we're not going to bleep the rest of it. Okay, here we go. Freddie is the general manager of a car dealership these days, but he used to be a car salesman, and he was a good one, partly because he's got what he calls the gift for the gab. His go-to move in lots of situations is to finish a sentence and then laugh, even when the sentence is bad news. Like, here he is, assessing his chances of making his sales goal for the month.
I'll give it a 50-50 right now because it's early.
Or this is him talking about a month when the car dealership did not make its sales goal.
And I'm strictly commission, so I make nothing.
So when Freddie is not laughing, you know it's bad. In mid-October, Freddie did not laugh much at his weekly meetings with the guys who sell cars for him.
All right, good morning. All right, in the beginning of the month, I went through the room and I told everybody where they had to be. Jason, you have 16 cars out. You need 10 more for the month for 26. I want to see you there. Bob Lender, you have 6 out. You need 9 more. Scotty, you're at 10 right now. You need to be at 18.
Last month, they didn't make their sales goal. That was September. First week of school is always bad for car sales in the suburbs. They were supposed to sell 127 cars and trucks. They sold 82. So they have to make October. And when I say have to make, this is not some sort of abstract, feel-good, compete with the dealership down the block just for fun kind of competition. They're part of Chrysler. And if they sell 129 cars and trucks by the end of October, Chrysler will pay them a bonus that's pretty much the difference between the dealership being in the black or being in the red for the month. Somewhere between $65,000 and $85,000, depending on which models they sell. Different cars earn different amounts. If they sell 128 cars, fall just 1 car short, they get nothing.
That's the worksheet that the Chrysler sends us to show us what money we can earn by how many cars we sell.
And there's a new one every month?
Every month.
In the middle of the month, the owner of this dealership, a sweet-faced guy named Mark Broadleib, and Freddie, Show me the document where Chrysler set their October sales goal.
No, this changes every month.
At their whim.
At their whim.
And that's another frustration. We have no idea what the number's going to be and really how they compute it. We've had numbers as high as 159, and we fight and we go crazy. It's cockamamie, if anyone knows what that means.
Because basically they shift around the ground rules on you.
Every month.
What makes all this tricky is that there are 4 other Jeep dealerships within 10 miles of Mark and Freddie. And Mark says that most customers will shop price at 2 or 3 of them. So to stay competitive, Mark and Freddie do what pretty much everybody else does. They set lower prices, knock hundreds of dollars off the price of the cars, sometimes sell them for less than they pay Chrysler for them, with the hope that they're going to hit their sales goal and get the bonus to make up the difference.
But there's no guarantee we will hit this number. So the pressure is huge because we have already given away the money to the consumer using that to sell the car.
So I need a big day today. I need a big day. No bull. I really need a big day today.
So with 12 days left to go in the month, numbers wobbly, Freddie laid it on thick during his weekly meeting with the sales team. He told him he sees them over the dealership security cams.
You know, I look through the video. I watch you guys in there. All on your computers, going to different websites, chilling. Dude, get on higher gear. This is no joke. I gotta be at that number. Or I'm telling you, I'm not gonna be a nice guy. So put your nose right to the ground and come out shooting today. Everybody. I want balloons in all the departments. I want the radios down on. Put the convertible tops down all over the place. I want tons of balloons in the showroom. I just don't want one balloon to a car. Balloon the whole freaking place so it looks like a circus. Make it seem like we're having a monster sale and it's a party. Because we got to be at the big number by the 31st, midnight. Period. No ands, ifs, and buts.
So everybody grabs balloons. Grown men inflate and tie and decorate. It's a truism in their business. Balloons sell cars. And then nobody shows up. For an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Saturday should be one of their busiest days, and it's empty.
Hey, Freddie, how's it going today so far?
Shit. Really bad. Really slow. Really, really slow.
Early afternoon, Freddie told one of our producers, Brian Reed, that it was way slower than usual. I don't know if you can catch this, but try to notice the song that is playing over the radio in the background as they talk.
What do you think it is? What's going on?
Not a clue. With all the advertisements out there and everything else, we should be swamped. Oh, I'm stressing. Oh, I'm stressing.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy.
Mark, who owns this dealership, and Freddie, who runs it, both know that most people do not trust car dealers. Most people think that they're ripping us off, throwing on extra charges, milking us for every dime. And they say if you and I only knew the reality, we would see that, in fact, the dealer is not making a killing off us. In fact, the dealer is often squeaking by with a very thin profit margin. They say it is all very different from what people think. And to prove their point, they let us watch. A bunch of us from our radio show, we recorded them as they headed towards the end of the month, trying to make their goal, trying to sell 129 cars, which, you would think that would be very straightforward, very businesslike. After all, new cars and trucks, they're 15% of all retail sales. But if what we saw is typical, what that means is that hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity and nearly 2 million jobs exist thanks only to millions of messy, seat-of-the-pants deals, many of which barely come together as salesmen sweat out their end-of-the-month quotas. It is way more chaotic than we expected. And we saw some things, it's true, we think will surprise a lot of car buyers. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. Today, one car dealership tries to sell 129 cars. We get to know the resolute men and women who try to pull that off. Quick note, this show is a rerun. Everything you'll hear in this hour all happened in October, a couple years back. Stay with us. So I wish I could pretend that we got interested in this subject at a radio show because we realized what an important part of the economy car sales are. And I wish I could pretend that we did a huge survey to find the most typical dealership out there. But in fact, we got interested in this topic and this particular dealership, Town & Country Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram is what it's called, in Levittown, New York, on Long Island. One of our co-workers here at the radio show, Robin Semyon, bought a used car there. Here's how that happened. A friend of hers who knows all about cars told her that the only vehicle that she should even consider for her young family is the Honda Pilot. And so she went looking online. She saw one listed on cars.com. It was at Town & Country, and she called, and she had no intention at all of going to look at the car. But a salesman convinced her, oh, you know what, you should come out today, right today. Talked her into it, which meant an hour-long ride on a train from Brooklyn with her husband and her 4-year-old. And then once she got there, they upsold her to a newer, more expensive vehicle, a Jeep Liberty, which she drove off the lot 24 hours later. Robin told me this story in the car in question on our first ride out to the dealership.
Yeah, I mean, the Honda Pilot, I think, is across the board, like, less problems, lasts longer, better gas mileage. I know. I know, but I love this car.
You got that? These people are such good salesmen. Not only did she pay more, not only did they put her into a Jeep, which meant that since they are a Jeep dealer, they could sell her a warranty, which they also did for a few $1,000s. She came out of this loving her car and loving them. How did they do this? Well, before we go any further, I think I should give you a quick primer on the basic setup and cast of characters at this dealership. New cars are sold at Town & Country, and we're going to be spending most of our time with new cars today, by 7 men and 1 woman, who, by the way, constantly make fun of each other in this raunchy way that we cannot play you over the radio. Just know that that's happening. Plus, there are 2 guys in the finance department. And then overseeing all of them, there are the general manager, Freddie, who you already met. And then out on the showroom floor all day, every day, are 2 managers who you're going to be hearing from a lot over the course of this hour. These are Mike Perez and Sal Lanzolata. Of the 2, Sal is the more complicated figure. Balding, with a gray goatee, he's got this vibe that is halfway between Ben Kingsley in Gandhi and the laconic hitman Mike from Breaking Bad. When Sal gets up to speak at the weekly sales meetings, the meeting, by the way, is in the middle of the showroom, he paces around a red convertible as he talks, reminding everybody of the basic tenets of car sales.
Customer says they're not ready to buy a car. They're all not ready to buy a car. Let's go over it again. They're in a car dealership. They got in their car, drove through hell to get here, looked for a parking spot for 10 minutes, parked, got out of the car, and walked into a car dealer. Not because the coffee's good. We went over this, because the coffee here is not good. They came here because we sell cars, and they want to buy one.
Nothing's changed in 100 years of selling cars, he tells them at one meeting. The customer wants to pay as little as possible. We want to make as much as we can.
You guys know the job, right? You've all done it before.
Be aggressive.
Be aggressive. ABC, Bob. What's ABC?
Always be closing.
Always be closing.
Okay, so these guys, the managers, Sal and Mike, sit near the front door of the showroom at this elevated platform that everybody calls the podium or the desk. And they oversee all the terms of all the deals. And, okay, if you've ever bought a car, maybe you've wondered what really happens, when the salesman leaves you and they go back and they talk to their manager, they talk to the boss. Okay, what do? Well, what they do is, we were told, they load their lips. Here's Freddie.
We tell them what to say to the customer, and we load their lips, send it back to the customer, and see where we can commit.
So, for instance, when one of the salesmen wants to get a woman to bring her husband in today to test drive the car that she's chosen, they huddle at the desk, a bunch of them, and Freddie starts to improv some lines for the salesman to say.
Listen, if you can take this car by Monday, what happens if I can? I'm not sure if I can do it. I have money for the weekend that I'm giving away from Chrysler. As long as you purchase it by tomorrow and pick it up by Monday, you win.
He's totally making this up. There's no weekend money like this.
Got extra money over the weekend through Chrysler. I want to use it. I want to give it to you. Get your husband in here.
And with that, the salesman heads off.
That's loading the lips.
You just seen it. Loading your lips.
But before the managers can load their lips, they have to figure out what price they're going to ask for and the terms of the deal and all that. And this works differently, I think, than the way that most of us imagine is happening when we buy a car. We assume that the managers and the salesmen are a unified team, and it's, us versus them. But in fact, managers and salespeople are often at odds with each other, and they spin information and they lie to each other. Here's Peter Passes, a very experienced salesman, who at the time of this recording was 3 cars shy of the 18 that he was supposed to sell in October. And what he's doing here is he's asking a couple what they want their monthly payments to be on a new car.
What if I can get you the same payment you're at now? $199 for 39 months, something like that.
Okay, hear that? $199 a month. Then Peter marches over to talk to the managers at the desk and listen to the number that he tells Sal that the customer wants.
Which wants to be about $150 a month.
$150, not $199. As soon as Sal is out of earshot, Peter turns to the reporter who's trailing him, Sean Cole.
You see what it did?
No, so
you
talk me through that.
Well, you saw what she told me she wants to be at $199 a month. Right. But I'm telling him $150 because I got to work him too with the same time of working
so you're
her.
going lower with him.
Yeah.
I see.
Why do this? Well, later, when the negotiations get tough, the manager, Sal, may ask Peter to squeeze the customers for a lower number on their trade-in, or maybe a higher price for the car, something that might be hard to talk the customer into. But Peter now has wiggle room. He knows he can push the couple up to $199 a month in payments because they already said yes to it. He can make up the difference there. In fact, as the deal proceeds, it runs into a problem. The desk, the couple, and the salesman cannot come to an agreement about how much the dealership should pay the couple for their trade-in. Sal says that it's worth one price. The customers say that another Jeep dealer offered them a lot more than that for the trade-in, but of course, that may be a lie. There's a saying in the business, buyers are liars. Or maybe the other dealership is lying to the customers. Maybe the other dealership told them an unrealistically high price that they never intend to pay. That happens too. Everyone is playing everyone. Sal, at the desk, tells Peter, the salesman, that the customer cannot be getting that trade-in price from the competitor. It can't be true.
Okay, stop believing what the customer's telling you. That car does $16,500 at the auction.
Okay.
There's no way they're paying him $20,000 on a car that they could sell at auction for $16,500.
Then I guess he's a better negotiator than me.
He's just a better liar and you're buying it. That's the difference.
So, to summarize, the managers and the salespeople are playing each other. The customer's playing them both. Each dealership is playing the other dealerships. And the manufacturer is playing all the dealerships with its quotas and its incentives. Chrysler sold 140,083 cars and trucks in October. This is what it took to sell one of them. So like I said earlier, several of us came and recorded at this dealership, and each of us chose different salespeople to follow. Robin Semyon chose Bobby Tantillo. A warning to listeners, somebody uses a word in an offensive way in her story. We're going to leave that in because we're trying to document what really happened.
Robert Tantillo, Bobby T around the dealership, is in last place. He doesn't like talking about it. How many cars have you sold?
I can't keep track.
I know someone here is keeping track.
Well, then you'd have to ask them.
I didn't have to ask them. Freddie makes it clear in that weekly speech he gives every Saturday. Remember that meeting? He goes over everyone's individual sales, gives them new goals.
You need 9 more.
Bob's there that morning, too. Freddie is keeping track.
Bob T, you're at 3. Thanks for stopping by.
Bob doesn't flinch. He sits poker-faced in a chair. A couple of guys look down or stare at their hands.
I want 15, Bob. 12 more.
Bobby T's new here. Before this, he was in the wholesale food business for 3 decades. Became a car salesman a few years ago after he retired. Bob says last month he had the most sales for a couple of weeks. But last month was last month. Freddie needs this month. Bob says the issue is there's just so much about selling cars that's out of his control. He says his biggest problem this month is a lack of leads. One way salesmen get leads is from the internet. Town & Country lists all the cars it has online. When people see one they like, they usually call before they come in to make sure the car is really there. But those calls go to guys in the back, in the internet department. Then when the customers show up at the store, they meet whoever they talk to on the phone, and one of the bosses at the desk hands them over to a real salesperson. Like Bob. Except that Bob says he's never been handed one of those leads.
They got to give it to a guy that they know is, that's been here, and they feed him the deal. That's pretty much how it works.
To really be tight with the desk.
Yeah.
Bob's not tight with the desk. But Freddie, in an attempt to help out, gives Bob exactly what he wants. His first internet lead. He tells Bob, go on back, get Dan. Dan works in the internet office. So these words, go get Dan, that's the signal for taking over an internet lead. Freddie raises his eyebrows at Bob and nods his head slowly like, you got that? Bob misunderstands the cue. He gets Dan from the internet office, who comes up to the desk to greet the customers and hand them off to Bob, who has suddenly disappeared. No one knows where he went, so Freddie gives the customers to another salesman. A bewildered Freddie calls over to Dan.
And I sent Bob T over there to get you or whatever, and then come back. Where'd he go?
Well, that's what I said. You busy? Come on. He kept going to the office. Go ahead.
He's like retired. He's retarded. I know. I told him, go get Dan, come right back.
Bob walks up minutes later.
The whole idea was to get Dan and come back and then take over the sale. That's what Dan does.
You wanted me to get him. That's what I thought.
Well, that's what Dan does. He comes in, he gets the sale, and then he gives it to the salesman. So instead, now Manny got it.
I'm sorry. I was talking to Chris about notes.
Yeah, exactly. 3 cars out. I would.
It's hard to watch someone with a lot of experience berate someone with much less experience for not knowing better. There's a line from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross. You never open your mouth till you know what the shot is. When you don't know the shot, it's not like you don't want to know the shot. Bob doesn't know the shot, but he's trying.
He didn't say, there's a customer here, take care of the customer. He said, go get Dan. So I went and got Dan. I'm supposed to know what he's thinking. It's hard. You get bullied. You get pushed around. But you let it go. Move on. It's a tough job. It's not for everybody. I told you that. You got to be thick-skinned. You got to be able to take a lot, absorb a lot. He's, well, now I gave it to the other guy. Okay. What do you want me to say?
So there actually is a place at Town & Country where they keep score of who has sold what. It's in Freddie's office, the general manager's office. It's a whiteboard with each person's sales for the month to date on it. Every car or truck that they've sold is represented by a little magnetic rectangle that's roughly the size of a 9-volt battery. Everybody calls these chips, and the different colors of the chips stand for different models of cars and trucks. And throughout the day, salesmen come and they hover around the whiteboard, seeing where everybody stands. And generally, everybody is shooting for at least 15 sales a month. At 15 sales, your commission for the next month jumps from 20% to 30%. There's also a bonus of $600 when you hit 10 cars, $250 if you sell 7 cars in the first 2 weeks of the month. There's money you get directly from Chrysler, and that can be anywhere between $50 and $250 per car. Mid-level salesmen here at Town & Country make around $60,000 a year. Top performers are closer to $100,000. Most of that is commissions and bonuses. The number one salesman at Town & Country is always the same. Some months he has twice as many sales as whoever's in second place.
This guy's, I've been doing this 28 years. This guy's like one of the best I've ever seen.
The salesman Peter Pasas standing at the board. It's the middle of the month.
Look, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15, 2 pending, 17 cars. Unbelievable. This guy's a born salesperson.
All the veteran sales guys at Town & Country say these things about this guy. He also happens to be the youngest salesman at the dealership. He's 28. Jason Messia. Reporter Sean Cole followed him around.
Jason stands out from everybody else on the sales floor in pretty much every way. He's taller than everybody else and way more focused on his appearance. Always a full suit and tie, double Windsor knot, gelled hair. He's handsome. And he isn't just the best seller at Town & Country. He's one of the best sellers of Jeeps, Chryslers, Dodges, and Rams in America.
So I'm going to go on my my login here, and then boom,
He showed me this internal Chrysler company website that ranks all the salespeople.
Talking thousands of people. You see this national number? There is 29,000 salespeople in the whole entire country.
And you were?
I'm 108.
108 out of 29,000. You have a shocked look on your face.
Because I look at it and I say, that's freaking crazy. You know what I'm saying? You would think a guy that's in this business for 15 to 20 years should be doing that stuff.
Jason's barely been in this business for 4 years. When I met him, on the last weekend of October, he had already outsold everybody for the month, including a guy who's been doing this since Jason was a toddler. But he says he's not competing with the others. He's competing with himself.
You know, I'm trying to excel. I have my own goals that nobody would even know about. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm like my own little celebrity in my own little body.
As we're sitting there talking, he pulls out a piece of paper and starts writing down everything he's saying as he says it. He always does this. I have 10 pages of notes from this interview. His notes. So, most of the salespeople at Town & Country are shooting for 15 to 20 sales in a month. That's considered a solid performance. And Jason is not satisfied with a solid performance.
There's a number that I really want to hit.
He writes down that number and circles it, and then moves on.
And I would love to just achieve... I've achieved 30 cars several times.
Writes down 30, underlined, several. That is 30 cars a month.
All right, so I've done that enough to say I could do it. You know, now I'm trickling...
Writes down 30, plus sign.
30 plus.
For October, hoping to finish the month in the mid-30s somewhere. But Jason's own personal Olympic goal?
Say what this number is that you wrote down.
This is 40. 40 is a big number. You know what I mean? If you can hit 40 cars, that's more than a car per day. That's sick. That's crazy. Especially when you're selling cars. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm selling suits.
What took me a while to understand is how Jason sells so many cars, or what he's doing differently than everybody else. And we asked pretty much everybody else this question, but their answers were kind of generic. He's a good-looking kid, good personality, got the gift of the gab. Even Jason sort of defaults to truisms when you ask him what his secret is. Says he treats every customer like he would want to be treated. But as much as you can figure out anybody in less than a week, I think Jason's success is due to 3 basic attributes, 3 characteristics he has that have propelled him to the top. So I'll go through those now. Number 1, constructive delusion. Now, Jason knows that a certain percentage of customers, depending on the month, will walk away from him without buying a car. Of course that happens. And yet, paradoxically, he enters every negotiation full in the knowledge that it will not happen. As we're sitting there, he drew a picture of a very lopsided hourglass with a line across the skinny part.
You know, are you looking at it half empty or half full? You know what I mean? Are you optimistic or are you, what's the other word? Pessimistic.
To Jason, the glass is not half empty, and it is not half full.
You know, me, I'm always at 100.
It is 100% full.
Yeah, it's full. And they're like, what the hell?
No, it's not. There's only half of the water there. No.
It's full to me.
But for someone who barely possesses the word pessimistic in his vocabulary, that's not always how he seems on the sales floor. More than any of the other sellers, Jason's anxious.
Going crazy right now. Biting my nails off because I'm stressed.
Biting his nails, hovering around the manager's desk. It's like the dealership making its quota is personal to him. Jason, and this is number 2 on our list of attributes, Jason doesn't just want to sell cars. Jason needs to sell cars. Case in point, I watched him work this one deal, a lease on a Jeep Liberty. He played it totally cool at first, but when the haggling started, it was like someone had clamped a set of jumper cables to his ankles.
And between 375 and 329 is 46 times 39 is another 1,700. But you got to put the value point on it. You now have a sunroof, and you have
The guy insists for an hour that he can't leave a deposit without talking to his wife. And then he leaves a deposit. Jason wins.
Anthony, I really like you. I really do.
He runs outside to chat with another customer that he's already closed.
We're getting there.
And at this point, he's completely dosed up on adrenaline, jabbering like a speed freak.
I just closed one. I just closed one that I didn't think I was going to close. Really? The guy was like you on the fence. He's like, my wife. I threw something at him, and he was like, and you know those intense moments where you're like, fuck, is we going to do it? And we did it. So exciting. It doesn't matter how many cars you do. It's like the first deal of your life.
2 hours later, he's already crashed. It's like that deal never happened.
Oh, I'm struggling right now to get these deals out, man. I'm really strapped. I feel like I told you, I'm back on that feeling. I'm back on that grind again. I feel like I need another 10 cars.
The high is fleeting.
Yeah, the high's gone. I'm ready for the next one.
You're ready for the next one.
So that's 2. And then the third and final attribute that I think has led Jason to being the top seller at Town & Country, ABC. Always be calling your girlfriend to say, baby, I just have a couple more things to take care of and then I'll be home.
We got into an argument about it last night.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is Jason's girlfriend, Gina. She stopped by to say hi to him at the shop one of the days we were there. The night before that, he had come home too late and screwed up their dinner plans. Gina says they're always running into a store 5 minutes before it closes. She's imposed a no work talk over dinner rule, but Jason always has just one last thing to tell her about something that happened at work. They've only been together a year, so they can both still laugh about it, at least with me. But of course, working long hours can threaten everything else in your life, and the entire business of selling cars is built on working long hours. Working weekends when more customers come in, coming in on your day off when the store needs to meet its quota. And the damage that can do is all around Jason. The sales guy in the cubicle next to him, Peter Pasas, told me managing a sales team at a dealership in Florida is what led to his divorce.
Yeah, of course I did. I was never home. I missed all functions and stuff because, I married my job.
Manny, who sits next to Peter, is separated from his wife, partly due to the business. Therese in finance said her job caused her divorce. Sal, one of the managers you heard from before, says the job was a factor in both of his divorces. Still, Jason and Gina wouldn't even be together if it weren't for the job. They met at the dealership when she was buying from another salesperson. And now, here they are, both driving the exact same kind of car.
It's funny. We both got white Jeeps. We love them. She has a 12, I got a 14, and we have a good time. And they're great trucks. They got everything you need, all the luxury, the right size, and they last forever.
It's like you're trying to sell me now.
Yeah, and if you've ever been, you're going to go out and buy a car before the end of the night. You're going to be like, Ira, you know what? I'll be back at the office in about 2 hours. I'm picking up my new Jeep. All right? I mean, this product is like on fire.
In the second half of October, Town & Country sales stay slow. And going into the last 2 days of the month, they still have so many cars to sell that when Freddie sees me arrive in the morning on the next to last day of the month, knowing what it is that I'm about to ask him, he starts laughing.
Oh, boy, here we go. We're behind 16 cars for the month so far, and that's not good. That means I need 16 cars between today and tomorrow.
Here's how hard that number is. Freddie tells me that he only expects 15 or 16 customers to show up in the store each day, which means that to get to his number, he's going to have to sell a car to every other person who walks in the door. And what my fellow radio producers and I witness over the next 2 days, okay, some deals do go through, but it's almost a catalog of all the ways that a car deal can fall apart. There are the obvious ways. A young woman doesn't get approved for her car loan. A father and son promise to come back tomorrow to sign the papers and take the car. They never come back. But there turn out to be all sorts of other ways that a car deal can implode that we had never imagined or conceived. For instance, Bob T. You remember Bob T., the salesman with the lowest sales of anybody this month. Okay, a deal of his starts to unravel after the paperwork is signed, after the deposit is paid. Basically what happens is he told a couple that their new car is $2,000 cheaper than it actually is. They found out the truth while talking to Rich, the finance manager, and kind of hit the roof.
Why am I thinking I'm getting screwed here?
When they Bob T. was also surprised. He himself thought it was $2,000 cheaper. The finance manager, Rich, tells Bob T. that Bob T. should have, first, better understood which rebates the couple's qualified for. That's where the mistake was. And second, he should have explained it to the couple.
You left the middle out. You left the meat of the sandwich out.
That wasn't told to me. It was that we were going to give him the same discounting. That's what I understood. I'm only going by the numbers that were given to me, and I gave him the numbers, and he signed it. It was started with $28,960.
Rich manages to save this deal, but barely. Then around 7 at night on the next to last day of the month, one of the salesmen, Scott Froelich, gets some weird news about one of his sales. He tells one of our producers, Jonathan Menjivar, that some customers that he had just sold a car to were now coming back to the dealership, but not to pick up their new car and take it home. No.
They have to pick out another car because the other car was sold and nobody marked it.
It was sold?
Yep.
That's right. They accidentally sold the same car twice to two different customers. Here's how it happened. Scott had sold a red Jeep Grand Cherokee to this customer, this guy who came in with his dad. They left a deposit. But another salesman, Mike Lester, everybody calls him Mike L., had already sold that same car the day before. The customer hadn't picked up the car yet, and the little magnetic chip that they used to keep track of the sales, the one for this car, nobody had put it on the whiteboard in Freddie's office, the board that keeps track of who sold what. Scott is not happy.
I want a drink. You're welcome to come over for a fucking drink.
Or maybe this does a better job capturing his mood.
God, I want to shoot myself right now.
An hour later, the customer is back on the lot with his dad, and Scott walks up to him. And maybe this is the time to tell you that Scott moonlights as a mortician, which means he's used to handling all kinds of situations with customers. And so even though he did absolutely nothing wrong, here's what he says.
I fucked up and I sold a sold car. I'll admit it.
Broke my heart, Fredo. Broke my heart.
Hope you caught the customer's Godfather reference there. Scott tells him that if the other sale falls through, the car is his, but the other deal does not fall through. So Scott and the guy go wandering around the lot in the dark, looking for another Grand Cherokee. Red, the guy is set on red. And they find one.
What is this one?
Yes, it is another red Grand Cherokee. Scott writes down the stock number, runs to the desk to check it out, and it has also been sold. Scott's only hope is that that deal will fall apart, and he can sell the car to this customer, who he sends home. Fingers crossed. The night, however, is still not over. And around 7:45 that night, something happens at the desk that really, really ticks off the manager, Sal.
The amount of stupidity that just happened far exceeds anything I have ever experienced in the car business.
Okay, here's a short version. Stephen Brown, a computer engineer from New Jersey, has come in to finalize a deal on a new Dodge Challenger coupe. Sal greets him.
How you doing? I'm all right.
Stephen is Laurie's customer, the one woman on the sales team, but Laurie is out sick. Stephen tells Sal that she texted him that somebody else was going to be taking care of the deal.
She didn't tell you who?
No, she just sent a text message about...
All right, give me a few minutes. If you want, you can grab a seat in the waiting area over there.
Stephen sits down. Sal gets Laurie on the phone.
I have a customer of yours here says someone else is supposed to take care of him. Who's supposed to take care of him? All right, good. Mike Lester's gone for the night, so now what do I do? Well, he's gone too.
Sal pages Scotty, but he's not around. Peter's around, but he's working another deal. And then, you know how in every shop of every kind, everywhere, there's that one team-playing, late-staying, extra go-gettery kid you can turn to who will always help clean up whatever weirdo mess just erupted 1 hour before closing? Yeah. In this case, that would happen to be...
Jason, what are you doing right now?
Jason comes over to the podium. Sean Cole, who is trailing Jason, picks up the story from here.
So Jason comes over to the desk, and Sal explains what's going on.
Here's the rundown. You ready? This is Laurie's customer. The customer came in to see Laurie. Laurie's not here today, so she set it up with Mike Lester. Mike Lester went home. Mike Perez knew about the deal. Mike Perez went home. TK's the finance manager on a deal. He's off today. So now I'm supposed to piece this together.
What are we doing?
I'm not quite clear.
Is the thing billed out?
I'm not quite clear.
Okay. So what am I doing right now?
It's not quite clear.
He's not quite clear. I know the call was ready last. How you doing, sir?
Good, I'm Jason.
Now, this isn't a situation where Stephen just needs to sign some papers and pick up the keys to his new car. There are still a lot of steps to march through.
I have other things to do.
He finds the folder and learns that Stephen and Laurie never got to a final offer for his trade-in. In order to do that, the car has to go up on the lift for a full inspection in the service department, which is inexplicably closed. On this, the second to last day of the month, when they need absolutely every sale they can get.
Nobody, they didn't call me to see if they could leave. We're going to lose this deal.
With no inspection, there's no trade-in. And with no trade-in, there's no deal. Somebody finally does a cursory inspection on the car without the lift, in the dark. All the while, Steven is getting more and more anxious that no one seems to know what's going on. Jason tries to get him in with the finance guy to work out the terms of the deal, but the finance guy's busy. Jason explains this to Sal, which sets Sal off again.
He needs to sit with that customer.
Okay.
This is a...
No, don't worry. Don't get excited. Don't get excited.
Dude, I'm about ready to walk the fuck out.
No, don't get
Like, no bullshit.
No, don't get excited.
Okay? I've never been in a store this fucked up in my life.
Don't get excited. I don't want you to get excited. I want you to just remain calm.
This is actually the third time Steven's made the trek out here from New Jersey. It's a 2-hour drive he does not want to make again.
I love the car, but if they don't get... they're going to have to get it done.
They cannot lose this deal. They're still 10 cars short of their monthly goal. When Steven does sit down with the finance manager, he can't get the interest rate he wanted, 3.3%. They finally resolve that, but then he doesn't have insurance for the new vehicle, or he hasn't called Geico to transfer the policy from his old car. He takes care of that too. But then, as he's transferring his stuff from the trunk of his old car into the new one, the billing office notices a glitch. Something's wrong with the new insurance card from Geico. Steven's address isn't on it, and the date on it says October 31st, even though it's October 30th. That means Steven won't be able to legally drive the car until the following day.
Tiffany, good evening. This is Jason. I'm a sales representative at Town & Country Jeep.
Jason gets on the phone with Geico, thinking maybe it'll be an easy fix. It won't be. We all stand around and watch him work this thing.
I'm sitting with a client of yours, and he's purchasing a vehicle, picking it up tonight. I have the ID card and the binder.
It's 10:15 at this point.
But it's not like he's opening up a new policy. So what are we doing here?
Then it's 10:26.
Well, we got to try to make an exception if you can. Please talk to your supervisor one more time if you can.
Finally, Tiffany comes through.
Oh my God, you're the best.
Geico says it'll email a new insurance card. Jason keeps Tiffany, the operator, on the line until everything is squared away with the billing office.
How long have you been working for Geico? You sound like you really got a lot of enthusiasm for what you do.
Thank you.
Billing gives the all clear. We all follow Steven out to the parking lot. It's about 11 o'clock at this point. Jason, giddily, watches him tear out of the parking lot and hang a right.
Jersey's that way. He went east. Jersey's west. Oh my goodness.
Well, coming up, Car Talk continues. That feels really weird to say, but it's true. That's in a minute from Chicago Public Radio when our program continues. It's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Today's program is a rerun. We did all the reporting for today's show a few years ago during a month, October 2013, when car sales were strong, up over 10% what they were a year before around the country. That's 1.2 million new vehicles sold that month. But that doesn't mean that every dealership in every town had an easy time of it. And today on our program, we watch one dealership, just one, on Long Island, Town & Country Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, Ram is what it's called, as they try to make their sales goal of 129 cars for the month. If they sell 129 cars, Chrysler is going to pay them a big bonus, and they need that money to be in the black for the month. If they just sell 128, bupkis. So it's 9:15 in the morning on the 31st. How many cars you got to get?
9.
That's Freddie, the general manager here.
9 more.
And what do you have to say about that?
God help us. God help us. I don't know. It's gonna be hard.
On a good month, he would start the last day with just 2 or 3 cars to sell. 9. That's crazy. And it's Halloween, which means that lots of potential customers are going to be out with their kids today. Everybody is so tense that it's not even 10 in the morning, and a customer walks out without buying a car.
No, we're done. Sorry, but we're done. I came in to make a deal, and that's not what I was expecting. Thank you. Have a good day.
And one of the managers, Sal, has this edgy little conversation with the salesman who let him walk out.
What happened to that guy you were working?
You left.
You gotta stop doing that, bro.
I stopped doing it. You don't help, guys. You gotta meet us.
You didn't even come up here. I mean, how am I supposed to help? Where's my crystal ball? In the shop? Do it again, you're following him. Go ahead. Pack up, go.
He doesn't go.
Fucking real.
The morning's still young when I find Freddie in his office, selling a car to himself. A loaner car for the maintenance department to lend out to customers who are getting their cars repaired.
He's allowed to count that in his sales total.
So now I only need 8 more. See, it's starting to come together already.
By mid-afternoon, he'll buy a second loaner car for the dealership. Back in February, Freddie bought a Durango for his wife to make the number that month, replacing a car that he had just bought a year before for her for the same reason.
Joe! What's the story with your cars?
Freddie's calling Joe Monty, one of the guys who runs the used car side of the business at Town & Country. Joe has got his own goal to hit for the month that is separate from the new car goal. 70 used cars. That's the number Freddie set for him.
Is any of them going out yet or what? What are we doing?
Going out, Bob.
Okay, but how come none was even delivered yet? I'm still sitting at 6.
Yuri's delivered the Chevy Trailblazer.
While we were at Town & Country, we asked everybody what it would mean for him or her personally if the team did not make its sales goal. And it was actually this guy, Joe Monty, over in Used Cars, who gave us the best picture of that. Sarah Koenig hung out with him for a while.
Joe's particularly stressed out this month. Half the time I'm with him, it feels like he's fighting, even with customers.
Nobody's giving you a runaround, Jessica, okay? Yelling and screaming and being rude and threatening is not going to get you anywhere. The car is a great car.
Next fight, he calls a woman in the back office who he thinks ratted to Freddie about a deal she didn't like.
Teresa, well, can you pick up the phone? Nails could get done later. Why did you run to Freddie? Why did you run to Freddie and tell Freddie about a Chrysler 300? Whose conversation? Why were you talking to Eddie? First of all, if a manager writes off on a deal and signs it,
it's an old car.
She hung up the phone.
I'm sort of surprised anyone would have the balls to fight with Joe. He's a big man, 350 pounds, large and in charge. The day I meet him, he's wearing a gray tracksuit. But what I quickly find out is that he's wearing a tracksuit because it's his day off. He's supposed to be at his son Mike's football game against Malvern. He hasn't been able to catch an away game all season, and he took this one Sunday off to do it. It was important to him. For so many years, he wasn't around enough for his kids. He was working all the time. Joe knows Mike will be looking for him in the stands right about now, and he's not going to be there because he's here at the car lot.
We're a little short-handed, so I got to be here, which is not a problem. Listen, if I'm making money, Just it's a catch-22, missing a game, but that's the car business. That's the car business. I'll make it up to him later.
Yesterday, Joe was late to his mother-in-law's surprise 70th birthday party. And last week, he was late for his own mother's 60th. The used car side of Town & Country is supposed to sell 70 cars by the end of the month. That's Joe's version of the 129 on the new side. When I first met Joe, used was at 35. At stake is Joe's big year-end bonus. Joe wouldn't tell me the amount of the bonus, but he made it clear it's very, very nice. Down payment on a house nice. Since he fell so behind the last couple months, this month, October, is make or break for Joe. He's got to get to at least 70 cars if he wants any hope of reaching that bonus by the end of the year. And it's not looking good. 20 years in the business, Joe's never seen a stretch this slow for this long. Joe blames it mostly on Hurricane Sandy. A year ago, tens of thousands of people lost their cars all at once, and they got new ones all at once. So now, a year later, tens of thousands of people are out of the used car market who normally would be buying and selling right now.
We had 2 weekends in a row, we sold one car.
Oh, my God.
2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays, and we sold one car.
Between the whole weekend?
The whole weekend. The whole 2 weekends. We sold one car. There was days we didn't see a customer.
Joe goes outside to do an appraisal on a Nissan Quest. This also gives him a chance to have a cigarette, one of about 40 Parliaments he'll smoke today. His wife and kids get on him about the smoking. He's got 6 kids. 6 kids. 2 are grown, 4 of them still at home. Joe's the only breadwinner in the family, always has been, so it's all on him. Even in the best of times, Joe's a worrier, like his grandmother. He's 42 years old, but he looks older. In the past year, he's gained about 80 pounds. In the parking lot, Joe throws away a half-smoked cigarette and then looks over the Nissan Quest. Tires are so-so, need some detailing, it's got a cracked taillight and a bad Carfax report, meaning it's been in an accident. $2,000 is fair for this car, Joe says. It's what these are going for at auction. He tells me the customers are going to want at least $2,500, but there's no way he can do that. $2,500 is just too much. He heads back inside.
$2,500, that's everything.
Instantly caves.
That's what I will do.
He needs the deal. They shake on it. Joe was about 22 when he started in the car business. He had a baby at 18, his son Joseph, and then 4 more kids, Dean, Chris, Michael, and Adriana, plus his stepson Louis. Joe himself was one of 5 kids. His mom raised them by herself, no dad around, no money. They moved around a lot. With his own kids, he's the uptight parent, the one who doesn't laugh enough, the one who hammers them about consequences. He wants his kids to fear his wrath, but also to know he loves them. Sometimes it's tricky for him to balance that, or even to talk about it.
I have a good relationship with my children. I didn't have a father, so it's hard to do something when you don't know how to do it. Sometimes you don't know how to. I'm like a manly man, so I love them very much, but I don't know how to sometimes show it to them. I kiss them, I hug them, but you know what I'm saying. You don't. It's something that I have to adapt to, but that's it. They're good. They're good kids.
Joe wants his kids to have more stability than he had growing up, and a better standard of living. For 16 years, they all lived in a big house in Smithtown, in a fairly wealthy neighborhood. And Joe says there was pressure there. Some other kids at school had fancy clothes and extravagant vacations, blowout Sweet 16 parties. He didn't want his kids to feel less than. So he made sure, within reason, that they had what the other kids had. But 3 years ago, he left Town and Country for another job at a Toyota dealer, and it didn't go well, at all. He says he lost everything, but in any case, it was a lot of money. They sold their big house in Smithtown and moved to a smaller house in Levittown, about 5 minutes from the dealership. And in a lot of ways, Joe's glad about that. It's made them closer as a family, he says. But he's also trying to work his way back up. He'd like to be able to buy them all a bigger house, give everyone a little more room. That's why he's so worried about this bad stretch of business and about getting that bonus. Toward the end of the day, his son Mike calls. Joe's already spoken to the coach about how the football game went.
2 sacks and 2 tackles. That's great.
Okay, boy, Dad.
What?
Do you think you want to go to your job, you can get some money so you can go get something to eat?
Yeah. All right. I'll be home in probably hopefully 20 minutes, and I'll give you money to go out to eat.
Okay.
All right. All right, bye. Every one of them. And it's hard to say no when you try your best. When you're doing well, it's no big deal, and you can take care of them. And then there's just doing well to where you're making it by. What is it? Today's October. What's going to happen in a couple of months when my son's getting ready to leave for college? Am I going to have the money?
It's mid-afternoon on the new car side at Town & Country. So what do you do all day on the last day of the month when you need to sell everything you possibly can? Well, instead of waiting for customers to come into the store, you call up any lead you have and try to close deals right over the phone if you can. One of the salespeople, Lori, does this with a previous customer. Jason also sells to a guy he knows over the phone. Peter gets a lead from a cop upstate that he sold a Durango truck to. The lead is a friend of the cop's, also a cop, who wants the same deal his friend got. Peter gets him on the phone and says they'll give him the deal for 2 reasons.
One of them, you were referred, and the other one is you're an officer of the law, and we respect that over here. Big time, just so you know. All right?
Of course, this leaves out the third and main reason for the great deal that he's getting. They need 8 more sales by 9 o'clock. And the cop ends up buying his Durango for $2,214 less than the dealership paid for it. Even after finance charges and holdback and all the other ways they make money, they still lost on this one. Ditto this guy, Richard Masana. He was going to get an oil change this morning and stopped in on a whim, and they showed him numbers way lower than any other dealer that he'd been to. Richard called up his wife to let her know, hey, surprise, we're getting a new truck. On his test drive, he still seemed amazed at what was happening.
Who would have thought Halloween, buying a truck? I never thought it would happen.
His payment will be $425 a month. The salesman says later that it should have been $525, but it's the end of the month. Turns out, yes, it is true that you do get a better deal at the end of the month at Town & Country, at least any month that they're struggling to make their goal. When you actually look at the numbers, the cars that they sell in the last 2 days, the average deal actually loses money. versus the deals that they make at the beginning of the month, where they made about $900 per car. Okay, for car people, I'm now going to say these words. I am factoring in everything they made on financing and warranties and extras and holdback and the 1% they get from Chrysler in every car when I make that statement. I am not factoring in any money that they would get if they hit their number and get their bonus from Chrysler. That would add about $500 per car, which still does not give them a huge profit per car. It used to be a lot higher. But today, because people research prices on the internet, profit margins on new cars are lower than what they used to be. Not just here, at this dealership, but everywhere in the car business. The owner of Town & Country told me that he used to make $500 more per car, and each salesman made more per car. Now, they'll have to make it up in volume. So it's more of a grind, a harder job with tighter deals, and less reward. And, if you're wondering, car dealerships make less profit than other businesses. A recent study by an outfit called SageWorks found that car dealers end up with less than 3 cents on every dollar they make as profit, which is less profit than furniture stores, office supply stores, restaurants, lower than pretty much everything but grocery stores. When car dealers say that they are not making a killing, on average, it's true. At some point during this last day of the month, one of the deals that they had been counting on falls through. Mike Lester's sale of a red Grand Cherokee. But turns out that's no problem for the dealership because Scott has a customer who wants that exact same truck. You remember that deal the day before where 2 salesmen sold the same car to 2 different customers? The mortician? It's that salesman and that customer, and the salesman, Scott, is very, very happy. And the only bad news about all this is what it does to Mike Lester's sales total for the month.
That drops me down to 14.
14 sucks because, like I said earlier, 15 is the magic number. 15 is where the serious bonuses and commissions kick in. Most of the guys count on getting those.
Could add up to big money.
But then, Scott, whose customer is now going to get the red Grand Cherokee, Scott realizes what this means for Mike and says to Mike,
Wait, is that your 15th car?
Yeah.
You take the chip. Give him the chip. Switch it around.
Okay.
And split it with me.
Okay.
Now Mike will get the credit for the sale. He's at 15 again.
Okay. Good. Love you, Scott.
Scott kisses Mike on the cheek. Producer Brian Reed witnesses all this.
So you're at 15 now?
Yes.
Did he owe you one, or?
No, but we always help each other out, especially on the last day of the month.
How do you feel?
Excited.
So amidst anxious salesmen and salesmen literally running to the desk or to finance, there is one salesman who is a model of calm. Even his cubicle is different from everybody else's. There's no swag, there's no pictures of family, there are no good luck charms. It's bare. The salesman, his name is Manny Rosales, says he doesn't like the distractions. One of our producers, Brian, who you just heard, got to know him.
Manny is 58, born in Peru. He has gray hair and glasses. One morning at the showroom, he gestured cryptically for me to come over to his desk, as if he had a secret to tell me. "Turn that off," he said, pointing to my tape recorder. I explained that I was a radio reporter and I needed to record whatever he was going to tell me for it to be useful. But he wasn't having it. He seemed unimpressed by our little radio story. He said my colleagues and I were like fishermen who had no idea what we were angling for. We had no focus. We were just casting blindly. Manny, I soon learned, is a man of many metaphors. I put down my recorder. "The thing you need to be paying attention to," he said, "is the negotiation. The salesman is the tiger, and the customer is the deer. The tiger has to eat, and you can't eat if you don't kill that deer." He moved his right hand up and then clamped his fingers around his own neck. "You have to go for the neck," he said. "But if you try to kill him too early, the deer will wake up and run away." As the day went on, I kept trying to get Manny to let me record him, but he wouldn't. Instead, he'd come up to me while I was interviewing someone else, point to his head very deliberately, presumably to his brain, give me a knowing look, and then walk away. At one point, we found ourselves facing each other at his desk. He asked me if I had read the greatest book ever written about car sales. "I don't think so," I told him. "What is it?" "The Art of War," he said, by Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu, as you maybe know, was a military general and strategist in ancient China. The Art of War is his magnum opus, where he lays out his tactics for how to succeed in conflict. And though Sun Tzu was writing about actual war, The book has become well known in business and sales circles. It's kind of like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if that had been written in the 5th century BC on individual strips of bamboo. So I went to the bookstore and bought a copy, and then headed back to Town and Country.
Manny, how are you, sir? Can I show you the homework I've been doing?
Please. I handed him my copy of The Art of War, which I'd marked up with notes about its relevance to car sales. I could see why Manny felt that it spoke to his profession. Lines like, draw them in with the prospect of gain, take them by confusion, seemed especially on point.
How far you are?
I finished it.
You finished it? Okay, I want to ask you a question. What did you learn?
What have I learned? Well, I'm here to learn some more.
And I was in. For 2 days, Manny took me under his wing, with my recorder running, and became my sales sensei. Manny's kind of an unusual car salesman, because he has no affection for cars at all. If a customer asks him how much horsepower a car has, or how quickly it can go from 0 to 60, usually he has to look up the answer or go ask a coworker. He has no interest in that stuff. So instead, Manny developed a way to sell the customer using a different approach.
The psychology. How you penetrate his brain.
Sun Tzu says, all warfare is deception.
To help me understand this, how to penetrate the brain of one's opponent, Manny showed me a couple of movies on YouTube. One was a reenactment of the Second Punic War in the 3rd century BC, Hannibal's campaign against the Romans. Manny wanted me to pay attention to one battle in particular from that war, the Battle of Cannae.
One of the bloodiest ever fought.
At Cannae, Hannibal's troops were vastly outnumbered. He had about 40,000 men, versus Rome's army, which had roughly 85,000.
The Romans will have the confidence that comes only with greater numbers. We'll present them with the unexpected, and watch them fall apart.
See, that is the secret. To present the unexpected.
Our forces will be arranged like this.
The details of Hannibal's strategy are a bit complicated to go into here. Manny had to draw me a diagram to help me get it. But let's just say it involves an unusual troop formation that made the Romans think they were gaining ground, when really, they were at Hannibal's whim.
At this point, the Romans will think they have won. Let them taste victory.
We're watching this, remember, on a laptop on the showroom floor. Customers are milling about, checking out the new cars, as Hannibal's mercenaries and cavalry encircle the Romans and trap them for good.
And now, the killing has started.
So how does Manny use this to sell Dodge Chargers? Well, just like Hannibal would, he presents the customer with the unexpected. What they expect is for the salesman to be pushy and try to coerce them into buying a car at a certain price. So Manny does the opposite. He acts as if he doesn't even want to sell the car. He agrees with the customer, uses a similar tone, repeats words the customer says. If someone comes in and says he's just there to browse, not to buy, that's totally fine, Manny will say, and he'll back off.
The idea is to make them believe that he's doing everything from his point of view. So he thinks he's playing his game.
But he's really not?
Absolutely not.
What game is he playing in reality?
My game. Simple. Simple.
Manny gave me an example of this that he'd executed a few days earlier with a customer named Julio, who was looking for a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Julio runs warehouses for a living and negotiates for his company, so Manny knew he'd be a formidable opponent. Julio told me later that he'd already visited 7 other Jeep dealerships by the time he got to Town and Country, and was calling and texting with another 3. When he sat down across from Manny, Julio made the first offer, $36,000. The Jeep was listed at $45,000, so Julio's offer was absurdly low. Julio knew it was unrealistic. He expected Manny to say no way, that he could never give it to him for that price. But then listen to what Manny did instead.
I said, all right, if I can sell it to 36, are you ready to do it right now? Show me the money. Where's the credit card?
Where's the credit card? Manny says this was the key move, the unexpected move.
Because I never thought I would say yes. Suddenly, they don't know what to do or what to say. They get confused. He cannot back up, because that's what he said to me. If you give me a $36,000, I buy the car.
At this point, the Romans will think they have won. Let them taste victory.
He pulled his credit card out?
Absolutely, he gave it to me. And I said, all right, let me take the offer to my manager. Even though I knew that we cannot do it.
After days of negotiation, Manny ended up scoring this deal. Julio paid $40,000 for the Jeep, which was low. The dealership lost money on the car. But after it was all over, Julio told me that this move, when Manny pretended to take his low offer seriously, he said without that, he would have walked out of Town & Country immediately, which would have meant no sale, nothing towards the monthly quota.
By 4 p.m., the hustling in the showroom is paying off. Chips are going up on the board in Freddie's office. Even one of the guys in the back rooms is pitching in. A finance guy, Terrence Kelly, TK. He's reaching for the phone.
So basically, the numbers are down. They need all the deals. So they made me call my niece in Las Vegas, believe it or not. She's been trying to buy a car anyway.
Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Hey.
How are you? I have you on the speakerphone.
Okay.
TK's got 34 nieces and nephews. Katie is his goddaughter, though, so he keeps a special eye out for her. At the time that this was recorded, the rest of the family didn't know that she was pregnant, though he did. Even though he did not know until he picked up the receiver and started filling out the forms for the car sale, her fiancé's last name.
Okay. Charles Parker? Getting married to somebody with the last name of Parker? Oh, Barker. Oh, is he related to Bob at all? Oh, what does he do, by the way? I never asked you. Ooh. HVAC company? Nice, I like that. Oh, as long as he's happy. You're in the right area for air conditioning, I guess.
The dealership is selling the car to Katie below cost at a $900 loss. And TK is going to end up spending $1,200 of his own money to ship the car out to her in Las Vegas. And this is the sale that puts him over the top. This is the 129th sale of the month. Just a few minutes before 5 o'clock, right after this happens, I stop by Freddie, the general manager's office. Nobody is running into high five. There's not even a staff announcement on the PA saying they made it.
I gotta say, it's weirdly anticlimactic.
There's no hurrah. There's no balloons falling from the ceiling. We did our job. Everybody earned their paycheck. That's the bottom line.
And then the clock starts ticking like tomorrow morning on next month.
You're all a bunch of losers tomorrow morning. You start all over again. That's how it goes. The wife. Oh, my God. Don't get married. We're fighting because she says to me, what time are you getting home? I said, what time do I usually get home? Whenever I get home. What do you want, a time card? What am I, punching in? I said, when I get home, and I hung up on her. So now she's pissed and she's texting. Okay, so why do you have to bite my head off? Told you should have married a plumber 9 to 5, okay? Weekends off. Okay.
He texts her back. This fight actually continues for the next few hours of her text message. Then, at 6:57, 2 hours before closing, one of the managers, Mike Perez, and Jason start huddling at the desk, a little freaked out. Mike walks to Freddie's office to explain the problem to Freddie. Their count is wrong. They're not at 129, because there's an extra chip on the board.
There was a chip up here that was supposed to be pulled off. What do you mean, we're down one?
Yeah, this was up there. It should have been off of there, because the customer switched cars, but someone put the new chip up, but didn't take the old chip off.
So I'm still at 128?
Freddie does know that at this moment there is another deal being negotiated that could possibly get them back up to 129. Peter is the salesman for that one, but the deal is stuck over the price of the customer's trade-in, what they should pay for it.
Go make that deal right now. Whatever it is, just make the fucking deal.
But that deal is not too easy to settle, and while they're waiting, more bad news. You remember that red Grand Cherokee that Scott and Mike Lester each had sold to different people, and then Mike Lester's guy dropped out, and Scott got the deal, and there was the kiss. Now Scott's guy also drops out. He doesn't want to buy tonight because he wants his mom to see the car tomorrow. Freddie overhears Scott saying this to one of the managers.
What, you have a problem? What's the matter with it? What's the matter with it, Scott?
The guy wants to show his mom tomorrow the car. Originally...
What do you mean, this isn't a deal?
I thought it was, but...
Are you fucking kidding me? You have insurance on this car and everything?
He didn't even send it into the bank because we don't have his prior employer.
What are we doing? I thought these all went into the bank today.
I asked you, all the cars have insurance and went into the bank? You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Scott Steele is dead. They're at 127, with just 2 hours left before closing.
I'm fucked. I just lost Scott's. I'm fucked.
So now they scramble to figure out, okay, there was Mike Lester's customer for that red Grand Cherokee. Could they possibly give him better terms that would bring him back to the table? Freddie orders one of the managers, Mike Perez, to make that happen.
Just do it. It's going to be too late. You're going to wait a half hour longer. It's getting later and later. I'd rather have a sure thing than not. Just fucking do it. How much does that lose?
Yeah, the only question is, how much does the deal lose? Not whether it loses. So Mike Perez calls Richie in finance. Richie tells him he's in luck. The guy actually called back saying that he would agree to the terms, but, okay, here's the catch. He just wants 24 hours to think about this. Mike Perez asks, okay, if we sweeten the terms, can we get him to decide right now? Rich doesn't think so.
It's not going to change anything tonight. For me to pull down my pants, you don't need to.
But Freddie's telling me to.
Yeah.
Literally, he's telling me to, so I need to just...
Bro, whatever you need to do. But I'm telling you, if I told him it was free and the same, you're going to get the same answer anyway. 24 hours.
All is lost. And then, in just 6 minutes, they turn it around. Rich offers a better deal to that guy on the red Grand Cherokee after all, and yes, he takes it. And Peter's deal, that was stuck over the price of the trade-in, gets unstuck when the managers suck it up and pay $1,500 more for the trade-in than they think it's worth. Back to 129. Everybody seems a little stunned by what just happened when it's done. Freddie and Sal look out at the showroom from the desk like old sailors on the deck of a 19th century ship that just got thrashed around by a hurricane and also a murderous white whale.
Believe this shit, Sal? I feel like I'm back in fucking Infinity days.
Oh, my God.
This is ridiculous this month.
Oh, my God.
Is this just...
the month wasn't bad enough. We got to suffer a little more at the last day of the month.
Unfucking believable. All right.
Fuck me.
Freddie's phone, of course, doesn't stop with the text messages through all this.
Oh, God damn. The wife. Who else? I don't know what she's even fighting for.
They get their bonus from Chrysler, $68,000. And because of it, the dealership ends up in the black, not the red, for the month. Jason finishes the month at 29 cars, almost twice anyone else as usual. Manny has 10, Mike L 15, Scott 18. The used car side, Joe Monte's side, did not meet its goal. They were hoping for 70. They got 57, meaning Joe Monte probably will not be getting his year-end bonus this year. And Bob T., the salesman at the bottom of the board, with the least sales this month, well, the night isn't over for Bob T.
Where'd you put the key? Where'd you put the car? I got the key. Where's the car?
Not long after they reach 129, a couple walks in wanting to buy a Dodge Dart for their 19-year-old son. Bob T. rushes them through the test drive, has the husband sit at his computer and use his phone to quickly call the insurance company, and then literally runs to get their new car prepped and inspected in the garage.
Rob, is this car going tonight? He says to bring it right over to service.
Yeah, but is it going or is it a paper delivery?
I don't know if it's going.
Find
It
out.
should go.
Who the fuck wants to take a car home at 10 o'clock at night? You still got the receipt for them? Bring them back!
These guys can say what they want. This old timer, nobody works as fast as me here. You notice that? Huh? Yes or no?
And with that, Bob T. lands Town & Country's last sale of the month, number 130, one car past the goal of 129. Or, anyway, that's what they thought that night. The next morning, when everybody comes in, they look at Chrysler's official count on the computer, and according to Chrysler, no, their count was wrong. One of their sales should not have been counted in October, which means that they did not have 130 cars like they thought. They had only 129, exactly 129, which means, yes, it was Bob T. and this very last sale of the month that took them across the finish line. Bob T. saved the day.
Just running down
Special thanks to Mark Broadleib and the entire staff at Town & Country Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, and Levittown for letting us hang out for days and barely ever suggesting during that time that one of us might help them reach their goal for the month by buying a new Grand Cherokee. We sent a photographer who does celebrity photographs. His name is Jeff Minton, out to Levittown to photograph the sales staff at Town & Country. You can see the results at our website, thisamericanlife.org. Today's program was produced by Robin Semien and myself, with Alex Bloomberg, Ben Calhoun, Sarah Koenig, Miki Meek, Jonathan Mentivor, Brian Reed, Alyssa Shipp, and Nancy Updike. Our senior producer for this episode was Julie Snyder. Production help from B.A. Parker and Diane Wu. Matt Tierney is our technical director. This American Life is delivered to public radio stations by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange. Thanks as always to our program's co-founder, Mr. Tony Malatia. On a vacation this month in Rome, he stood in line for 3 hours at the Colosseum, then gave up, went back to his hotel.
At this point, the Romans will think they have won. Let them taste victory.
Don't worry, he'll be back. I'm Ira Glass. We will also be back next week with more stories of This American Life.
200 balloons.
From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. Okay, here's something that we did not expect. Check this out. This was recorded on a stage in Brooklyn, St. Francis College.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Same month, in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them.
Same month, a professional company in Boston, Massachusetts, at the Public Theater.
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them.
Colorado, at Camp Shakespeare, you can actually hear the sneakers of the teenaged Hamlet squeaking.
Why do you go about to recover the wind of me?
Oh, my lord, if my duty be too bold.
And at the Bay Area Shakespeare Camp, presented by the San Francisco Shakespeare Festival, the kids put on a production that they have concocted that is made up entirely of death scenes from different Shakespeare plays. Death scenes because kids love death scenes.
No, the drink! Oh, my dear Hamlet, the drink, I am poisoned!
8-year-old Marissa Graham grabs her throat like a cat in a violent cartoon. Everyone in the production is 8, except for Polonius, who's 6.
The rest is silent.
There's actually no way to tell how many productions of Hamlet are up in any given month. In summer 2002, when we first broadcast today's show, when we made these recordings, the American Theater website listed 12 theaters doing Shakespeare's Hamlet, 11 productions of the play I Hate Hamlet, one production of something called Hamlet Dreams, and one theater doing the dreadful and feared Hamlet Machine. Of course, Hamlet itself is kind of a weird play. The central character is in a situation that very few of us are ever going to find ourselves in. His uncle killed his father and then married his mother in order to become the king. The play is 4 hours long. The main conflict of the play is a guy debating in long, complicated monologues whether or not he should kill somebody. What is there in that for most of us to relate to? Unless, of course, we happen to be murderers. And what would the play be like if it were actually performed by murderers and other violent criminals? What would they see that the rest of us do not? Well, today on our program, we answer that question. And the answer is a lot. Over the course of 6 months, reporter Jack Hitt visited prisoners at the Missouri Eastern Correctional Center, which is a high-security prison, from their first rehearsal to their last performance of Act 5 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. We're devoting our entire program today to the drama that he found there. Our program today, Act 5, we bring you what we believe is one of the most evocative productions of Shakespeare done anywhere in 2002, one that you would have had a hard time getting tickets to. It was only performed in prison. Here's Jack Hitt.
The first thing they hand me when I pass through the thick iron doors is a tiny black box called a screamer. Pull the cord attached and a phalanx of armed guards will sweep from all points of the prison and try to rescue me. I keep it in my pocket as I enter a huge yard with more than 1,000 prisoners wandering around. Some of the guys are playing handball against walls, some are lifting weights as I walk across. Most are friendly. A couple of the skinheads, their arms dense with spider tattoos, narrow their eyes as I pass. Across the yard there's a big building. A long corridor leads to a door marked Education Annex. Inside, there's room D-168, where a small white-haired woman, Agnes Wilcox, is holding auditions for Hamlet.
Let me see. If you're not Hamlet, Horatio, Laertes, Claudius, or Fortinbras, would you write down roles that interest you? Those roles are Clown 1 and 2. We've got Priest. We've got Osric.
Dressed in loose prison uniforms,
Lord.
the actors sit around tables in this cinder block classroom beneath inspirational slogans. Believe in yourself. Think positively. The aspiring cast is half black, half white, and ranges from young lifers in their 20s to old-timers in their 50s. Because it's against the rules to congregate an audience of felons for the 4 hours it would take to perform the whole play, Agnes has staged one act every 6 months, starting in December 1999. Tonight is the first read-through for Act 5, the final bloody climax. Many of the inmates here never finished high school, and all they had known of Shakespeare was the phrase, to be or not to be. Tonight they are hearing some of the other famous speeches for the first time.
Pestilence on him for a mad rouge.
Rogue.
He poured a flagon of Rhenish on my head once. This same skull, sir, was Sir Yorick's skull, the king's jester.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He have bore me on his back 1,000 times.
Most read-throughs with any cast are terrible. This one is terrible too. The actors know it, but they plow on through the script. An inmate named Paul, who serves as Agnes's assistant director, explains why.
First 2 or 3 acts, I thought, oh no, there's no way. There's no way we're going to get this thing down and go and do a live performance and doing soliloquy 2 pages long. I thought this is impossible. But what I learned in here, I guess, from performing it and hearing it done time again, was it'll be okay. It'll work out.
The local critics agreed with Paul. The Act 4 performance earned a review in the St. Louis paper. The actors were said to be commanding and compelling. With the entire performance, the reviewer wrote, a 400-year-old text is restored to freshness. It seemed hard to imagine. I've seen Hamlet a dozen times. I've seen Kevin Kline do it at the Public Theater. I saw the famous Diane Venora version 3 nights in a row. I even saw Ingmar Bergman's production done in Brooklyn, performed entirely in Swedish. What else is there to learn from watching another Hamlet? But the truth is, this production was different, because this is a play about a man pondering a violent crime and its consequences, performed by violent criminals living out those consequences. After hanging out with this group of convicted actors for 6 months, I did discover something. I didn't know anything about Hamlet. Remember how it starts. Hamlet sees his father's ghost, who explains he was murdered by Claudius, Hamlet's uncle. The ghost commands Hamlet to avenge his death by killing Claudius. The play is, basically, Hamlet pondering this single horrific action and whether he can be the man to do it. To be or not to be. These days, when people say the name Hamlet, it's usually just a metaphor, shorthand for somebody who is afraid to act, who dithers and thinks too much. We almost forget just what action Hamlet was contemplating. These actors haven't forgotten.
My name is Manuel Johnson, and I'm 36 years old. I'm here for 2 first-degree assaults. I play Hamlet.
When you're on stage doing Hamlet, what do you draw upon in your own experience to make the character come to life?
The idea of wanting to hurt someone. I have experienced hurting someone to the point of their life may be in danger. I was a very confused and angry person, and it escalated into me shooting 2 people and leaving them for dead.
My name is Chris Harris. I'm 38 years old, and I play the 4th character of Hamlet.
Let me explain something. The character of Hamlet is played by 4 people. They are all on stage at the same time, taking turns delivering the lines. Agnes did this partly to give more actors speaking roles and not saddle any one man with all that dialogue. But as theater, it works. Hamlet's role is full of long soliloquies and rhetorical asides. This small gang of Hamlets, which mutters to itself and laughs at its own jokes, nicely captures that fractured quality of Hamlet's different personalities. And it's also bonded the 4 actors together. They call themselves the Hamlets and constantly talk about their character. To Chris, it seems like Hamlet is just the 5th guy in their odd clique, another criminal with a complicated past.
Let me put it in terms of the year 2000. So what we have is an upper middle class youngster, 19, 20 years old, who comes from a well-to-do family. They own quite a bit of land. The people in the small town respect him and love him. And his uncle murdered his father and is now married to his mother. So, all kinds of serious issues there. All kinds.
Chris and the Hamlets practice alone most days. Finding time when the 4 can just get together by themselves is tough when there's always 1,000 inmates around. So they do it where they can.
On every Sunday after the noon meal, the 4 of us will assemble. We'll have our little gray Hamlet books, and we'll proceed down to the track. And if you were simply walking by, what you'd probably hear is, you'd hear this chatter of somebody giving their lines clearly. The rest of us with our heads down in the books, walking in the line. Now, there are people, because there are benches that are all throughout the inside of the track. So there are people that actually watch us. So you'll hear this old English-style speech, ho Horatio, and these people are like, ho what?
One of the problems of doing any play in prison is that being a good actor is the exact emotional opposite of what it takes to be a successful inmate. Rather than close off all feeling and look tough, you have to open your vulnerable self up and withstand often cruel laughter as you try to find some authentic emotion within you. In this way, a level 4 high-security prison is no different from high school. And so most of the inmates who audition for Agnes tend to be, actory people, the theater types of prison. Back in 1999, they just had to put up with abuse from the bigger, meaner inmates. But that changed. In fact, a lot changed after Agnes cast the role of Hamlet's best friend.
My name is Derek Big Hutch Hutchison. I play Horatio, the scholar.
You might be surprised to learn that Derek Big Hutch Hutchison is big. He has a smooth, bald skull and hooded, threatening eyes. The kind of guy that if you met him, you might think, he's probably serving 120 years for armed robberies, and that would be correct. Hutch isn't like the rest of the cast, and he's the first person to tell you.
In prison, you got this hierarchy system. Listen, let's compare it to the ocean. You got the minnows, and you got the killer whale. Minnows being the lowest, killer whale the highest.
So, which are you, Big Hutch?
I'm the blue whale.
Right.
That means I control the killer whales, and I can eat up them minnows if I want. And I mean, that's how it is. Most of the guys in Hamlet, they're minnows. I mean, I don't normally would associate with them.
Well, as he puts it, the killer whale versus the guppies. We're all guppies, and he's the killer whale.
That's Tim, who plays Ostrich. And as a minnow/guppy, his take is a little different.
In dealing with an individual like a killer whale, even for him, it's a lot of show. The guys see him out in the yard, all right, and now some of the guys that have come into Hamlet see him how he is in acting and the seriousness that he takes. He's not what his persona is.
In other words, he's an actor. But Big Hutch is also a critic. His criticism is sharp and extends to places most actors avoid. His own character, Horatio.
I think he a chump for real.
Really?
I think he a chump. I mean, he supposed to be cool with Hamlet, and they're best friends, but I think Horatio's just somebody, a sounding board for Hamlet. I mean, the majority of his lines is, "Hey, my lord. Yes, my lord." I mean, if we're friends, we're going to communicate better than that. I mean, you're going to tell me your deepest secrets. I want to know what you in the field you did last night. I believe that he should have been a little bit, show me that I'm truly Hamlet's friend. Don't wait till I get to the end of Act 5 and I'm getting ready to drink a couple pours and then you stop me. Let me know down the line, man, that I'm really your friend.
Have you ever heard anybody talk about Shakespeare's characters this way? Hutch was always doing this, talking tough but then betraying a real gift for literary criticism. Call it his inner minnow. In fact, he pointed out a weakness in the structure of the story I'd never heard before in all my experience with the play, that Hamlet's dilemma over killing Claudius isn't really much of a dilemma.
I don't see the conflict. I don't see what Hamlet is dealing with, man, that, I should kill a king now. I shouldn't kill him now. No, you knew once your father said revenge him, you knew you was gonna do this. So, what's the hubbub about? Do it. I mean, that's the same way I couldn't see somebody raping my daughter or something and just sitting around. No. I got to do you, man, and that's just, you done. That's why I think Hamlet's old minnow too, man.
Are there no reasons to delay taking swift action, even if you're convinced that you've been wronged? I mean, that's why he stages the play within the play, right? To make sure that Claudius is the bad guy.
See, that's where we got to go back. Now, if I'm strong enough to believe in ghosts, then I'm strong enough to believe what that ghost tell me. If I'm strong enough to believe you're a ghost, then I'm sure you know what happened to you.
Once Hutch got on this riff, he kept going. Denmark's a prison, Hamlet tells Rosencrantz in Act 2, and Hutch says you could do a version of the play that takes this central metaphor literally. All the characters in the play are types he sees in the yard every day. The Claudiuses who'll do anything for the emblems of power, money, drugs, high-end tennis shoes. Poloniuses, who kiss up to the powerful. Rosencrantz and Guildensterns.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Oh, man. Administration put some guys out there just to get some info. Yeah, you got your rats.
And in Hutch's version, he solves the play's structural problem, fabricating a true dilemma for Hamlet by giving him good reasons to kill Claudius and not to kill him.
Just the way it would happen. Claudius killed this guy here because the guy had the biggest dope business in prison or something. Gertrude will be some sissy. You find them everywhere in prison. But the guy they killed be Hamlet's brother. So now, being in the prison world, he must defend that honor. But he got a girl talking about, you only got 5 years. You know, you did 2, do 1 more, they gonna parole you. Come on home, cause I love you. And I'm. He got another brother in business out there that he can get with to help raise his status. So he got all these things to look forward to on the street. But if he let that killing go, he'll have the roughest 3 years of his entire life. He'll be the piss pot of the institution. So, I mean, he got this dilemma. Would he be strong enough to survive that and get out there? Hutch wouldn't. I ain't gonna lie. Hutch,
Okay, places please for the top of Act 1.
2 months after my visit with Hutch at the first read-through, I was cleared once again into the old classroom. The actors tell me they've been practicing their lines wherever they can, often shouting them from cell to cell. Agnes has also had local professors come in and lecture. She assigns the cast essays to write about their characters, and the Hamlets have been walking the track, memorizing their lines, as has Danny the Gravedigger. This rehearsal, they are already tinkering with tempo and intonation. That first read-through seems like eons ago.
This same skull, sir, was, sir, Yorick's skull, the king's jester.
This?
Even that.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio.
He has borne me on his back 1,000 times.
And how old in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it.
A lot of what you see looks like any rehearsal. Agnes is taking notes, a couple of guys are reading to themselves, and the occasional line reading devolves into
I
laughter.
will fight with him upon this theme.
The scene that's really slaying everyone tonight is the first appearance of Osric, the king's toadying courtier.
Sweet lord, if your lordship were at leisure, I should impart a thing to you from his majesty.
And just talk to Paul. Just talk to Paul.
Just talk to Paul.
Yeah. Come on, let's stay in the suit.
My name is Timothy Lance. I'm 38 years old, and I play the role of Osric. Osric is what they call a fop, which a lot of people tend to say, well, it's a sexual gender thing where he's homosexual or whatever, but he's not. What he is a king groupie, a wannabe. Sweet lord, if your lordship...
Tim is the one member of the cast with screen time, 1 second of it. He used to live in California, and in a Frankie Avalon Annette Funicello revival, he was in the background in one fleeting camera pan, hitting a volleyball. Tim once ran a trucking company, and like most of the cast, doesn't want to discuss his crime. But he does want to talk about how he researched his character in the TV room.
There's so many fops in television and movies. Nathan Lane was a little bit too much. I think Robin Williams was a little too hyper. The one that really stood out was David Hyde Pierce, his character of Niles Crane. I'd watch Frasier and kind of look at how he did things and his mannerisms, and worked out pretty good. I mean, sir, for his weapon. But in the imputation laid on him by them in his need, he's unfellowed.
What's his weapon?
rapier and dagger.
What you say?
Do you think your audience is going to be able to draw the very sort of fine distinction you're making between a fop and a gay person?
Yeah. Not really.
To me, this seemed like an especially risky interpretation of the part. But Tim explains that folks on the outside have a TV movie understanding of prison sexuality. There is a small group of gay prisoners in the closet, another smaller group that is actually out, and then there's the vast majority of prisoners, straight men, not having any sex at all. Just like outside, Tim says.
Okay, gentlefolk, let's refocus. We're going to start where Laertes leaps into the grave.
Putting on a play in prison is different. First, Agnes always has to deal with some last-minute crisis. Tonight, one of the Hamlets can't come. He was assaulted and was placed in solitary for protection. Plus, everyone must be strip-searched in the side room before and after every meeting with Agnes or with me. Worse, it's incredibly hot. The room is stifling. The only relief is an ancient stand-up fan in the corner. And a lot of the time, the actors are just trying to figure out what their lines mean. Here's Chris, one of the Hamlets.
There is a piece of dialogue I give in 5-2 in which I'm talking to Horatio about how I got Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And it starts like, up from my cabin, sea gown scarfed about me. Up from my cabin, my sea gown scarfed about me. I didn't know what that meant. And one thing Agnes will do, she'll stop us in midline, and she says, "What does that mean?"
Okay, let's go back.
Okay.
Remember that what you're wrapped in is not a cloak. It's fog. How do you describe it?
Sea gowns.
Your sea gown.
Scarfed about me.
Yes. Your sea gown scarfed about you is fog.
I knew that.
Yeah. But now you gotta act it.
The sea gown scarfed about me is the fog. I'm out at night. And it's the flow of the words. Up from my cabin, sea gown scarfed about me. Groped I in the dark to find out them. Shakespeare really put some work in this, and this is the only play I've really studied from him, but he really is good.
After a few months, the rehearsals begin to resemble a routine. They always start with some silly voice relaxation exercises.
Zip, zap, zap, zip, zap, zap, zip.
The cast is such a mix. There's Chris, who is a member of Toastmasters International, and when not rehearsing, likes to listen to Journey on his Walkman, while his good pal Brat, a former gangbanger, has a subscription to Lapidary magazine. Then there's Edgar, a former post office employee, and Mike, the fight coordinator and a devout Wiccan. And then Stan, who's obviously a college-educated businessman, now trying his hand at writing Zane Grey westerns. And of course there's Hutch, the killer whale. What keeps them coming back to D-168 where Agnes, this tiny, tough lady, bosses them around? Here's Edgar.
She makes us feel human, man. She really does. When I go in there, I have to take my clothes off and get butt naked and bend over and spread my cheeks so some man can look up my butt. You know, all the humiliating things that they do to us here. And when she comes in and does what she does for that minute, the 2.5 hours, all these guys with PhDs and can be doing other things. They come in and at least can feel human in here.
I think this has taken me to be insane for just one day. Just one day I'm sane enough, you know?
This is Brat Jones, another one of the Hamlets.
If you don't keep exercising your mind, then you start to lose it, right? Is that, you know, that's possible, right? This gives me opportunity to see a society beyond what I'm used to. I'm familiar with rap music and videos and bit butts on the TV and all that, but let me come back to something that I'm not familiar with. You know, let me get into something else. You know, that did open my eyes into getting into reading Sylvia Plath and Frost and Wadsworth and different other people.
Everybody had powerful answers for why they were in the play. One guy with a third-grade education level said that he was surprised to find out that he wasn't stupid, just uneducated. And for almost all of them, acting was beside the point. But one inmate got bit by the drama bug, and bit hard. His first step onto the boards was a revelation.
I'm James Word. I'm 32 years old, and I play the role of Laertes. My wife told me that I should be an actor. And she said, you can act, you should be an actor. She's had the opportunity to see me deal with certain people on certain levels, and she's seen me change my...
Certain people on certain levels. Okay, come on. Let's as we say in the editorial business, let's air that out a little bit.
Right. Well, I've always wanted to be a con. And I've always wanted people to like me. I wanted to be liked. And the environment that I was in, people liked the bad guy. You know, those were the heroes in our neighborhoods, the bad guy. And so I went from this real quiet church guy to this real bad guy. You know, and I get around them and I'd be like, yeah, I'm this and that, you know, and would act it. You know what I'm saying? Act big, bad, tough, and I don't care when that really wasn't me. Because when I went home at night, I felt bad about what I did, and most of the time was scared to death doing what I was doing. And my wife saw that, you know, and that's why, I think that's one of the reasons why she's like, you can be an actor.
James Word looks like an actor. He's young and handsome, with a smile that can carry him through just about any situation. He plays Laertes, the brother of Ophelia. For the first few acts, Laertes was played by an Amish pedophile. That's another story. But the Amish pedophile got transferred, and so it's almost legend in the prison now. Like something out of 42nd Street, James Word stepped into the role. He created a sensation among the cast when they realized what a really forceful performance could do for a character. Word made a lasting impression, even on the killer whale.
You come along and act 4, and you get this guy James Word. And Word's playing Laertes. He was hitting, especially when he was mourning the death of Ophelia. Was it scene 4? Something. He makes his entrance, and he's finna be after the king and the queen. Stop him! Hold up, Laertes! And man, you should have seen this guy Word, man. He come in there like, drop to his knees, and he did, why? I say, man, that should have been my part there.
I knew I had done a good job. You know, I did. I knew I had done a good job. But when it was over, you know, and everybody was leaving and shaking hands and interacting with each other, the comments that was coming afterwards, you know, we had our questions and answers, and, you know, so many people was, man, you were so good. Have you done this before? You should do this more. You should continue this, you know. And that feeling for me was just, it was one of the best feelings I've ever felt. It was like the day my daughter was born. And it made me want to be better. Not just in acting. I mean, it just opened up a whole world for me. You know, like, man, if I apply myself, you know, I can pretty much do whatever I want.
Oh, treble woe, fall 10 times trouble on that cursed head, whose wicked deed thy most ingenious sense deprived thee of. Now, pile your dust upon the quick and dead, till of this flat a mountain you have made to overtop old Pelion, or the sky's head of blue Olympus.
The first chance I get to see Word in action is at tonight's rehearsal, where Laertes goes to the grave of his sister Ophelia. Word was a natural, and talked about acting that way too. Laertes' emotions in the final act roller coaster from grief to fury to shameful regret. To pull it off, Word channels Laertes' character in a way that should make any method actor cringe with jealousy.
Coming into Act 4, he was very angry, violently angry. And I can identify with that, and I can play that role very well because I've been playing that role all my life.
Must there no more be done?
No more be done.
Lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring. I tell thee, O churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling.
You know what I'm saying? And Laertes, he falls into the manipulation, and he becomes a bad guy for a little while because he's being deceitful now. You know, I never really looked at it, and it's somewhat cowardly. And I can relate that to my past life as a criminal. To put a gun in somebody's face, that's an unfair advantage. You know, so, and that's a cowardly act. That's what criminals are. We're cowards. You know, when we're criminals, we are cowards.
Do you feel like you can be Laertes because so much of Laertes is inside James Word?
I am Laertes. I am.
Coming up, what the ghost of Hamlet's father can teach you about murder. In a minute, from Chicago Public Radio, when our program continues. It's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. If you're just tuning in, what we're doing today is that we're devoting our whole show to Jack Hitt's story from the Missouri Eastern Correctional Center, where over the course of 6 months, Jack watched prisoners rehearse and stage Act 5 of Hamlet. Again, here's Jack.
As the performance day grew closer, and I spoke to more and more of the actors, it became clear that each actor used his past in dense psychological ways to understand his part. All the Hamlets saw themselves in their version of the Dane, and Edgar would stop me in the hall to tell me that he thought evil King Claudius had some redeeming qualities. But for one actor, the relationship was even more complicated. He used his part to help understand his past.
My name is Danny Waller. I'm 44 years old. The character that I've played was the ghost of Hamlet's father. The reason I chose that, when I first read the script, the words jumped out at me. And they made me feel things that I haven't felt before.
What in your experience drew you to those particular words?
I took a man's life, and I felt he was talking to me through that. That he wanted me to know what I put him through. I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined fast in fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt, purged away. But that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house, I could a tale unfold, whose lightest words would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood, and make thy two eyes like stars start from their spheres. There's one other spot that goes like this. Thus was I, sleeping, by a brother's hand of life, of crown, of queen at once dispatched, cut off even in the blossoms of my sin, no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my imperfections on my head. And it was pretty much the same way with him. He was taken before his time.
So when you read the character, do you feel like who's talking when you say those lines?
I'm the body up there, but the words are coming from mostly William Pride, the man that I killed, he's mostly the one talking.
There's not much defense between the actor and the word as you get with an actor who puts his or her training between the two. These guys call it like they see it, and it's true. It's just dead true.
That's Agnes, the director. Besides putting on plays at the Missouri Eastern Correctional Center Visiting Room, she's mounted shows on more familiar stages, the acclaimed Actors Studio in New York, the Berkshire Festival in Stockbridge, and the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Connecticut. After becoming the artistic director of the New Theater in St. Louis, she started an outreach program to take professional actors doing dramatic works by writers like Don DeLillo and perform them before prison audiences. In time, the prisoners became the actors. And in more time, this side project took over her entire theater company. Now, this is what she does, directing prisoners who may not have the chops of professional actors, but have an intimacy with the material that doesn't exist anywhere else.
When Claudius is in the chapel and speaks about his sin and his regret and his ability to undo it, it broke my heart because the man playing it felt all of those things fully. And you know, I know these guys have deep regrets. But it was palpable. The audience was stunned. You could hear a pin drop. And that was especially true with the inmate audience. He says, "Oh, my offense is rank. It smells to heaven. It hath the primal eldest curse upon it. A brother's murder.
A brother's murder.
Pray can I not?
Pray can I not, though inclination be sharp as will. My stronger guilt defeats my strong intent. What if this cursed hand were thicker than itself with brother's blood? Is there not rain enough in the sweet heavens to wash it white as snow?
My name is Edgar Evans, and I'm 39 years old, and I played the King Claudius in Hamlet.
And like a man to double business bound, I stand and pause where I should first begin, in both neglect.
I don't consider myself no great actor or nothing, but I try to do the best I can. And when I did the speech, I was looking upward. The chapel was at the incline there, and I was just looking up toward the top, and it's like no one was there but me. I honestly didn't see a soul in the chapel when I was saying this. Maybe even, and I'm just, I'm not saying this would, it seemed almost like I was praying this actual speech to God.
But oh, what form of prayer can serve my turn? Forgive me my foul murder. That cannot be, since I am still possessed of those effects for which I did the murder. My crown, my own ambition, and my queen.
I have a wife and 4 kids, and by being incarcerated, I felt that I've really let them down. When I said that speech and my wife was here in the visiting room, I don't know if it had an impact on her. I don't even know if she truly understood all of the content, but I wanted her to hear that speech more than anybody.
O wretched state, O bosom black as death, O limed soul struggling to be free art more engaged. Help angels, make assay, bow stubborn knee, and hearts with string of steel, be soft as sinews of the newborn babe. All may be well.
Edgar wouldn't tell me his crime, although I found myself playing a constant guessing game with all of them about this. They wouldn't discuss the past. That was then, they said. This is now. But I had to know. So one morning, instead of visiting, I went to downtown St. Louis, not far from the Arch, and sat in a records depository, reading old case files. It was more horrible than I thought. One guy I particularly liked shot a man in the head twice at point-blank range. Another of my new friends raped his pubescent daughter, impregnating her. Later there was an abortion. Another friend grabbed a man getting out of a car, put a gun to his chest during a robbery, and pulled the trigger. Others had sodomized children, younger children, the age of my own children. I didn't fall asleep for a long time in my frigid Ramada Inn room. At 3 a.m, I had one of those cinematic nightmares. I dreamed that a very good friend of mine, an editor at a magazine, had me over to dinner. She got angry with someone else there, pulled out a gun, and plugged him twice, right in the face. Then she asked me not to talk about it with anybody. I panicked, and the next thing I knew I was sitting up in my hotel bed, panting like a sprinter. It didn't take Freud to figure out what it meant. Someone I knew and liked was a murderer. I wanted to talk to the cast about this, but I was anxious. I know this sounds crazy, but I was afraid I might hurt their feelings. I felt like they had betrayed me. But strangely, I felt that I had betrayed them too. There was only one day left to talk, just before the final performance. So, before curtain, I asked Brat to sit down with me. I could barely spit out my question. You know, we came in here 3 months ago or 5 months ago and met y'all for the first time as actors. And so yesterday, we decided to go down to City Hall and read everybody's record. And so we read everybody's record. And I have to say, since I met you as an actor first, and now I know what you did, it's very hard for me to wrap my mind around this other guy that's on paper. And so I want to know how you do it. How do you square the Brat Jones of, what was it, 13 years ago? Yeah. With the one that I see on the stage tonight.
It's taking a lot of practice and trying to discover who I am now. It's not been easy. I was off into the drugs and all those things when I got locked up for that case. And I slowly had to come out of those things. Because I always knew in the back of my mind that I had already went to the lowest point in life. So now it was time to see what I could do as far as going to the highest point in life.
It was a hard question for any of them to answer. They all said the same thing. But I'm this guy now. I'm not that guy. Are we forever the prisoner of our actions? It's a good question. It was Hamlet's question, and it's the unresolvable conflict in our penal system. Why do we put people in jail? To rehabilitate them and restore them to our company? Or to punish them, regardless of how much they might change? One can't hold both these ideas in one's mind simultaneously. That's why our prison debates on TV and in Congress are so vehement and incoherent. The two sides cannot be squared by mere politics. They can't even be squared by the people at the center of the debate. Here's Danny.
When I first got this sentence, I said, yeah, I'll go ahead and just die in here because I don't deserve to be out there the way I am. You know, that was 13, 14 years ago. And but a person changes. I'm no longer the criminal I used to be. I know that I will not do any other crimes out there. But I took a man's life. Do I deserve to be out there? I cannot say.
Hamlet, thou art slain. No medicine in the world can do thee good. In thee is not in half an hour's life. No medicine in the world, blah, blah, blah. I can't get it, I forgot. What? All right.
It's opening night, dress rehearsal. Word has flubbed his line again. Things aren't going well. The only time the authorities would allow a dress rehearsal is in the hour before actual curtain. This is the first time the cast has seen the acting stage, the first time in costume, the first time they have real props, skulls and shovels. The shovel is a story in itself. Given every prison fear of shovels, you can use them to dig tunnels, remember? The authorities insisted on using only a flimsy cardboard replica. Everyone is tense, even Agnes.
Guys, let's double the pace so we can get through this, get it all out. The site is dismal.
The site is dismal.
And our affairs?
We are in the prison chapel where their first performance will be held before an audience of inmates. 6 months after my first visit, it is, at last, showtime.
Alan, how you doing today?
Armed guards let the audience in the door one by one. Agnes calls her actors together in a corner and gives them the final pep talk.
Paul, Edgar, could I have you?
Okay, team.
Things to think about. Make sure to stand still on yours and other people's punchlines. If something falls apart, pick it up. Go somewhere with it. Make up words. I don't think anybody here has memorized it, so we're safe. And mostly, this afternoon, people were working so hard, I don't think you had much fun. Hard work's behind us. This is the night to just have a blast.
Okay, one for the team.
One for the team.
Ready? One for the team. Set.
Once the play starts, Danny and Stan deliver their lines okay. But all that antique Elizabethan wordplay isn't connecting with the audience. But then midway through the scene, the crowd starts to really respond to the emotion in Ophelia's funeral march. Laertes is the last mourner, humming at the side of the grave, tossing rose petals on her corpse. Right away, the action picks up. The Hamlets appear, taunting Laertes about the sincerity of his grief. They quarrel and exchange insults. A duel is proposed, which culminates in the last sword fight scene.
Come, begin!
Most directors block this scene as a professional fencing match. Agnes has it looking like a knife fight in an alley. The audience totally gets it. Word holds his arms slightly out from his sides, his hand gripping his sword like he would a shiv. He and one of the Hamlets are circling each other like thugs. Word jerks his shoulders forward, a pure back alley feint, a fake move meant to intimidate his opponent, something all of them have probably seen right in the yard. Then the room goes quiet as the actors start slicing one another, leading to Laertes' death scene.
Hamlet, thou art slain. No medicine in the world can do thee good. In thee, it's not in half an hour's life. The treacherous instrument is in your hand. Unbaited and envenomed. The foul practice has turned itself on me. Lo, here I lie, never to rise again. Exchange forgiveness with me, noble Hamlet, that mine and my father's death be not upon thee.
The audience, like a living thing, leans forward in unison to watch Word slide down the chapel wall and die. There are no cackles of discomfort, no shouts from the gallery, just breathless silence, the silence of recognition. In all, there were 3 performances, and on the final night, before family and dignitaries, the entire cast found the magic that Paul said would happen during that first read-through. The actors knew that this would be the last time they'd get to perform as a group. So when Danny and Stan came out for their final Gravedigger appearance, somehow those Elizabethan jokes worked.
Are they heathen? How does thou understand the scripture? The scripture says Adam digged. Could he dig without arms?
Having seen every performance, I can testify, the actors rose above their talents in that last show. Mike and Hudson as the belligerent priests, Buck and Tommy as the ambassadors, Sylvester's Fortinbras. You could feel the mutual support. Just as mislines and other mistakes play off one another and can spiral downward into fiasco, the rhythm of the room can go the other way too. Strong lines beget better performances. The gang of Hamlets came together in a way they hadn't before. That little mob seemed like one voice. But the real surprise for me that last night was Hutch.
I'm more an antique Roman than a Dane. There's still yet some liquor left.
It's here that Hutch's Horatio delivers his most famous line. The play is almost over. He's surrounded by corpses and speaks to his dying friend Hamlet. In the other performances, I always thought Hutch had been plagued by what you might call the Jack Nicholson syndrome. The actor's persona is bigger than any role he might play. But tonight, Horatio has Hutch under control and the audience in his hand. He has the one great line to deliver, and as Hutch might say, he nails it.
Down cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
So Hamlet dies, and Fortinbras takes over, and then the drums of Hamlet's funeral begin. On other stages, a curtain would fall, but here, beneath the cafeteria's unforgiving fluorescence, the actors just stop. From the back of the room, Agnes says simply,
End of play.
The audience tonight is a mix of St. Louis's artistic elite. It's a theater crowd, polite, well-dressed people. Many of them have helped fund this production. They want and fully expect to meet the talent afterwards. And for many of the actors, this moment, they call it the cast party, is the most prized. James Ward and Edgar Evans mentioned it specifically when I talked to them. Just the chance to stand around in a room full of normal people, drink a Coke, and carry on about the play, the future, the weather. The freedom to chat and mingle, like you were in the lobby of a theater instead of a bulletproof visiting room.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
It's my sixth time here.
Yeah, you come to all of them. Yeah, I appreciate it. We thank you. Thank you very much.
In a high-security prison, though, when a play is over, it's over. No sooner have the bows finished than Danny, who doubles as the stage manager, turns right around and starts frantically striking the set. The guards had informed everyone that they'd have about 10 minutes for the cast party. Like any play, all the work was for this moment, to get to the end of the last performance successfully. And now that it's here, these few minutes are shot through with a kind of melancholy. Soon everything will end, and everyone will return to his pre-acting life. Here, that near future is visible. In the side room, everyone sees him, is the guard waiting to strip search them back into the yard. He wears a dull expression on his face and rubber gloves on his hands. But that would be 10 minutes from now. There is still time for pretending.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate the support.
I really like this act. I like the.
It was so
balance between the
complicated.
beginning and the end.
According to the prison commissioner, 97% of the people locked up today will someday join us on the outside. Manuel is leaving for a halfway house in 48 hours. He could have been out weeks before, but chose to stay in prison so he could finish the play. Hutch has a scheduled date for release, and a few more of the cast have parole board hearings coming up to decide whether they have changed enough and should be allowed to mingle with us on the outside. To that extent, this whole night, including the cast party, is just another rehearsal.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, you were great.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks.
So you think you like performing?
Yes, ma'am.
Jack Hitt is a longtime contributor to our show. Since we first aired this program back in 2002, most of the actors have been released from prison. Edgar, who played Claudius, is now the chief union steward at a hospital. Big Hutch works in public transit. James, who played Laertes, is starting a youth drama program in St. Louis. Tim moved to Hollywood to produce his own screenplays. Manuel got out and died in a truck crash in 2008. Danny, the guy who talked about speaking as the man he killed, is still serving time. Agnes is retired after 2 decades of running prison performing arts, but they're still in operation. Chris works there. Chris, Edgar, and Brad all continue acting in their alumni theater program. You can learn more about them at prisonperformingarts.org.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? was just so